Okay, well, I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting, June 23rd of the Trinity County Planning Commission. If you'll all join me for the pledge, we'll get this meeting started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. So I'd like to call this meeting to order and open the floor up to any public comment not related to any items on the agenda tonight. You may. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Donna Jones. I have been a property owner on Brooks Lane, Weaverville, in the Community Service District for 9.5 years. For 2 years, quiet coffee on your deck, barbecues with your friends. For 7 of those years, we have had rooster noise 15 hours a day if you live within 400 feet of the said problem. Unfortunately, those who live 100 to 200 feet will hear it even when their windows are shut. A constant assault of your peace and tranquility on your own property, a trespass of your right to peace and prosperity with this noise nuisance. It also impedes us from cleaning our properties for fire protection and working in our gardens without being assaulted by the said noise all day. At present, we have sent and called numerous complaints over the past few years to Animal Control and Code Enforcement. The ordinance from 2015, zoning number 315, also states if numerous complaints are made, the county can have it removed due to disturbing the peace and as noise nuisance. Our own code enforcement has said, he's had lots of complaints over at the CDSD districts. Some have had to bring their whole neighborhoods to a planning commission with their complaints to have it eradicated. This is absurd. These properties are small and puts this nuisance within 100 feet of many people. If it were a barking dog 15 hours a day, the code officer would enforce it to be removed or whatever means to repair the peace for the surrounding properties areas. This is no different. To be assaulted in my own home 400 feet away, any window open from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. is ridiculous. This current code no longer serves the CSD districts. We are asking the Planning Commission to amend this ordinance or consider a director's use permit for housing roosters in CSD areas, so the neighbors have a voice in the decision-making process of this issue. We all pay taxes on our property, and our dollars go to pay your salaries to serve and protect all citizens. When will our rights be heard and our voices? That was about roosters. I have one other complaint. This is an environmental issue. About 3 months ago, the environmental health officer was called to my property at 510 Brooks Lane for an odor and possible water contamination from a ditch behind our garage. The ditch starts at 590 Brooks Lane above us. The officer noticed the stench when she got out of her vehicle and inspected the ditch, suggested tests for these water from the soil should be done from the ditch, which came back with E. coli and other nasty contaminants. The people who looked at it had said they had never seen anything so disgusting and so brown in all the years they've been doing it. Anyway, that all came from the horses above, which at one time were 6 in a very limited area, which now we're down to 3.
Excuse me a moment, Donna. Would you like me to add additional time for her
Yes.
complaint? Thank you.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I wasn't watching the clock. I apologize.
No worries.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm almost done. These results were forwarded to the health inspector after 6 weeks of emails and calls to the officer, no response of what next. Water quality and properties and contamination should be a top priority for everyone. Also, after the 7th week, she lets us know that there is nothing she can do. Her negligence devalues my property and other properties that this ditch flows to, which is 3 or 4 of them, that go all the way to East Weaver Creek, especially when it rains, but it can also go underground. If department heads and others that are elected to save and protect don't protect us, all of us citizens, then it's time for a change. Be the change, make your grievances known, and use your voice. Your votes count to make any change. Thank you so much for your extra time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Is there any comments from the floor? Yes.
Hi, Veronica Kelly Albies, Douglas City. I wanted to take a moment. I was at the Board of Supervisors meeting the other day and I made a request to them and I wanted to come and say it face to face to the Planning Commission. In that, I don't know what kind, as you guys come into this position, this appointed position, what kind of training they give you, because I know Todd talked about a binder. I hope he got it. I know the staff is really overworked on things, but over the last several months, it has started to feel a little like maybe you guys aren't getting everything, because I've watched all of the three of you up here asking some really solid planning questions. Water, overlay, how much inventory is in that? And the information not be readily available or supplied. And I've been coming to these meetings for a really long time now. Feels like forever for most of us, I'm sure. But I never see maps in front of anybody anymore or documents. And I know most of it's on the computer, but you know, when you're making some really strong decisions, and not just individual by a parcel, that's a little bit easier because then you can really dig in on that. But we're going into some really big things, ordinances and general plan. And it has to be kind of for, the whole of everybody. And I know we want to streamline a lot of processes, but we don't want to jump over steps. And sometimes I'm starting to feel like that's what's happening. And it started to feel a little bit more like, hey, I'm asking for a friend, what's going on with my project? And I could appreciate that there's so many backlogged things, and cannabis and non-cannabis. I mean, there's a lot of backlog going on, and it's not the staff's fault. They've got a lot to do, and I get that. But as someone who sits on this side and would rather be teaching a guppies class right now, I come and I listen because you ask for our participation. And some people are tired of seeing me come to these. I'm tired of coming to these, but I believe in this community and I live here. My husband's family has been here from the beginning, started in Hayfork. Most people know my husband's grandfather, George Albies, who was the water witcher, as I'm told every time I meet somebody. Do you know George Albies? Know of him. So, you know, we come with a commitment to the county and to the land and to our neighbors. And I mean all of Trinity County. That's truly how I feel. And I just want to make sure that as you guys move forward, all five of you, that it really is, ask the staff if you need maps, and I know they'll provide them when they can, if it's available. I've watched them do it. But there are some serious questions I feel like don't get, and maybe it's all in front of you. I don't get to see that. So I just wanted to bring this out and say something that, because I know almost all of you on this commission, personally, most of you. And then I know you're all bright and you're here for a reason. And I know you're committed to the county as well. I just have started to feel a little bit like, hey, are we trying to just rush through things? Or are we trying to, do them right? I got it, heard my ding. So thank you very much for your time. And I do appreciate all the work you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any more public comment? Is there any on Zoom? Do we have Commissioner Barrett and Keaton online? Perfect. Welcome, gentlemen.
Would you like me to ask them to unmute?
Yes. Okay, with that, I'll ask for a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, with that, we're going to move to item 1 on the regular calendar, which is the approval of the minutes of April 7th, 2022, special meeting of the Planning Commission. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So I will move to approve the minutes with 2 minor changes. One is under special calendar item 1, paragraph 3. I believe it's a typo. It should be 1,000-foot setback instead of 100-foot setback. And then on planning commissioner reports, Commissioner McIntosh stated that he is the northern reprehensive, and Duncan is not reprehensive.
Thank you.
Quite the contrary. I believe that should be representative. So I move the approval of the minutes with those two minor changes.
Noted.
I will second that, but I would like to add a comment as well. When I first started coming and participating with the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, I don't know, 9 years ago, public comment was it was itemized, and the gist of what the individual said was put into the public record, right? There is the importance of the statement being in the public record. If there is someone who agrees or disagrees, at least it's been put in public record. When there is just a list of people that spoke from what town, there's nothing in public record about what they said. And so I'm not sure why that has changed, or I know that that's cumbersome to do, but I think that that's really, really important for the whole concept of public comment in order to get on the public record. So is there any feedback that can be provided?
A lot of, excuse me, Debbie Rogie, Administrative Coordinator. The minutes were getting to be 25 pages, trying to document all of people's comments. And we do provide the list with their city, and with the fact that we have all of our meetings on recordings through YouTube, and we can even get Zoom recordings. It was decided that not to do these verbatim minutes. And I have found in other guides for persons such as myself that do these, it is asked that you do not do verbatim minutes, for the fact that some of the comments, being it hard to track, are also left up to the interpretation of the person trying to write them down and understand what the language that someone would want, you know, not using a lot of and repetitive statements.
Of course, what I traditionally, when we were, it was not verbatim, it was the gist, the spirit, the intent of what they're saying. I understand. Definitely, we wouldn't want verbatim. Nobody has.
Most of the things that I had read and when I first took this over, was everything was verbatim for a while. And before that, they were also just as similar to this and following, you know, further back history and styles of other counties. This is where we kind of landed
Okay.
as far as.
It's concerning, but you know, I just would like to let the public know that I'm concerned with that.
Okay, with that, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
There is a motion and a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Need one
Commissioner
more.
Barrett,
Yep, aye.
Perfect.
thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. Okay, moving on to item 2. It is a conditional use permit for a variance, and I think we have a memorandum with this. Staff is requesting this item to be continued to July 14th. With that, I'd like to open it to public comment. So should I start with staff? Yeah. Gotcha. So yes, staff, please give us a presentation. I apologize.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, members of the public in attendance and on Zoom. I'm going to present item 2, which is a memorandum requesting that item 2 be continued to the next Planning Commission session. It's mainly due to the fact that while we were preparing the staff report and getting this item ready for this session, the applicant kind of vocalized that she wanted to change the project a little bit, which means that we have a little bit more work to do before we can bring it to you for your review. And so that is why we are recommending for it to be continued to the July 14th Planning Commission session. So staff recommends that we open, or that you open public hearing and take any public comment, close the public hearing, and then continue the item to the July 14th, 2022 regular Planning Commission meeting. Thank you, and I will answer any questions to the best of my ability.
Is there any questions for staff? Any from Zoom?
No, I'm good.
Okay. With that, we'll go ahead and open it to public comment. Thank you for your comments. We have anybody on the floor? Anybody on Zoom? Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the commission. Any comments from the commission?
Nope.
Nope.
I'll move
Nope.
to continue this item to the.
Close the hearing.
Oh, wait.
Close what?
To close the public hearing.
Sorry, one moment. Commissioner Barrett muted himself, so I'm just going to unmute him and make sure he has no comments.
No, no comments from me. Thank you.
All right. So if we have a motion to continue this item to July 14th,
Make that motion to continue this item till July 14th.
do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call.
Because they're on Zoom.
Gotcha. So at this time, we'll do a roll call because we have 2 commissioners on Zoom.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Sharp, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Heaton, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Commissioner Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you, 5-0. Item continued to July 14th.
Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is an unmanned outdoor telecommunication facility conditional use permit P-21-32. A request for approval of an unmanned wireless telecommunication facility. This will include a 90-foot monopole ground equipment, including a diesel generator for emergency backup power and a 2,025-foot compound with security fencing. The project is located on a 154-acre parcel located in the unincorporated community of Hayfork in Trinity County. The physical address of this site is 6000 State Highway 3, Hayfork, and the APN is 014-180-28. Planner S. Fisher will present this item.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners, members of public in the audience and on Zoom. I'm going to present item 3, which is a conditional use permit for an unmanned outdoor telecommunication facility. So this item was a request for approval of this facility, which would include a 90-foot monopole, ground equipment, including a diesel generator for emergency backup. There is also pictures provided in the packet, which include everything that's going to be included on the proposed project site. And it's going to have a 45 by 45 foot compound with security fencing around this facility as well. The purpose of this project is to expand the network in Hayfork and to assist first responders in emergency. This project was started by former CAO Coons, who was hoping to create an agreement with AT&T to get this facility on county property. The property is 6000 State Highway 3 or 372 Hayfork Dump Road. The first address is what the APN is in our system, but I know that that 372 Hayfork dump is like known as that address off that street where that where the transfer station is. So we put there both to make sure everyone knows where this is located. The site is zoned as public facility with a general plan designation of public facility as well, which we believe to be a great fit for what this project is. In addition, there were two factors that we wanted to work out before bringing this project to the Planning Commission. The first was the conditions of the soil on the site. So given previous concerns of the quality of the soil of the transfer station in the past, we requested that the applicant submit a soils report for the Environmental Health Department's review to make sure there was absolutely no concerns regarding dredging up hazardous waste or soils. So they did provide that, and it was reviewed by our Environmental Health Department. And so that, coupled with the fact that they conveyed that there would be no excavation on site involved in this project, there is not going to be a concern like of any hazards coming out of that soil. In addition, the location of the project is within the Hayfork Airport's sphere of influence. So it's going to be in the furthest back zone within the airport, the zone E. And so we wanted to make sure that this tower would not pose any threat to the operations of the Hayfork Airport. So what staff did is we reached out to the Trinity County Airport Manager to see if a meeting of the Airport Land Use Committee was necessary. And so after having communication with, it's the former airport manager, we decided in collaboration with Caltrans Aeronautics that given the fact that the structure that's going in is 90 feet and is not going to be elevated above like base ground level, it is not going to pose a threat in where it's going to be currently located, due to the fact that typically for zone E, hazard or bringing it to the Airport Land Use Committee is typically at 150 feet. This determination was also made because the project was routed to the FAA, who decided that the monopole at 90 feet did not pose a hazard to airspace or the airport, nor did temporary construction equipment that they're planning to bring on site to help construct this facility. So all of that together, we decided there was a determination made that this didn't need to go to the Airport Land Use Committee, and that this project did not pose any threat to the airport. So now all the concerns are out of the way in that regard. Evaluating the site for the zone district, the intent of public facility is for public and social benefit. And one of those, one of the uses listed in like the general description is for utilities. So one of the uses permitted with a use permit in the district is for public utility structures, which we believe encapsulates what the intent of this structure is in the district. And that is citing chapter 17.29 in the Trinity County Zoning Code. Now, the only concern that comes from the public facility district in regards to this structure itself is the height. So typically in this district, there's a height maximum of 40 feet, but citing section 17.30.050A, there are standards where if there is a chimney, a pole, or a similar structure that's involved in a project, if it's involved in a use permit, it can go to the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission can decide, due to the nature of the structure, that it can exceed the typical height maximum for a district. So given the intent for the facility and the fact that it is not going to pose a hazard, we believe that this is a reasonable request for the project. And as far as this type of facility going into a district, per 17.30.30B of our zoning code, there are provisions that state that other public facilities, such as telecommunication facilities, can go into any zone district. But staff believes that the fact that this is going into a public facility, which has an intent for projects like these, this is a really good fit for the location of this project. So when evaluating a use permit, there are 3 typical guidelines that we like to look at in accordance to the use permit section of our code, 17.32. And that is sound principles of land use, not injurious to public health or welfare, and consistent with the general plan. And we believe that this site going on to public facility is consistent with the zone district, that the evaluations made in collaboration with environmental health and with the airport's manager, with the assistance of Caltrans Aeronautics and the FAA determination, means that it is not going to be at the detriment of public health. And finally, it is consistent with the general plan, given its general plan designation, and that it's trying to increase the network and communications in the Hayfork community. This project was determined to be exempt from CEQA, given section 15303 or class 3 exemptions, which consists of the construction and location of a limited number of new small facilities or structures, installation of small new equipment and facilities in small structures, and the conversion of existing small structures from one use to another where only minor modifications are made on the exterior of the structures. So we give him the definition of this exemption. We believe that, especially that first part, a limited number of small structures, does apply to this facility. And so given that, staff recommends to the Planning Commission that you adopt a California Environmental Quality Act determination of a class 3 categorical exemption, section 15303, for small new construction projects, which includes the construction of small facilities or structures, adopt the recommended findings listed in resolution PC-2022-06, and approve the conditional use permit P21-32 based on the recommended findings and subject to the conditions of approval listed in Exhibit A to Resolution PC-2022-06. And just to elaborate on the conditions, there are 2 conditions for this project. The first is that the applicant will need to receive, build, or apply for and have final building permits for any structures that they're trying to put down on the property. And the second is that if there is going to be any modifications to the project that pose a significant change, the applicant will need to submit to the planning department a request for a change in modification. And now both of those things are required by the code, but we like to highlight that and make sure that it's very clear that these are the requirements for a use permit. So that's why we added it on. Thank you very much, and I will answer any questions to the best of my ability. And we have a representative from AT&T, Nick Chagas, who is currently in Zoom, who also would like to speak to this in the public comment.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Skylar, and good job on your presentation. It was very thorough and informative.
Thank you.
Is there any questions for staff?
I have one. Oh, go ahead, Carol.
Pardon me. First of all, Rory Barrett is muted, is what he told me.
I agree with Chairman Sharp. Very comprehensive report. Thank you very much. Very great report. I do have I probably missed it, but so Trinity County owns the land.
Mhm.
And so I was looking for like an agreement with them that would cover the fees they would pay the county and liability, who's responsible if somebody runs into the the pole, and what would they charge first responders if you wanted to use the pole? Is there any kind of agreement that goes with this? Between the county and the applicant?
I believe so. I haven't really been involved in those conversations, but I believe that there's going to be like a tolling agreement made between AT&T and the county to cover that, but I can't speak to the specifics of it.
Okay, is that? All right, I'll save my comments. That was my question. Thank you.
Is there any other questions for staff?
I have one.
Todd, since you're on Zoom, could you just say who you are when you're speaking?
Oh, yeah.
Just for the record?
Okay, yep. Todd Heaton.
Thank you.
This is Todd Heaton from District 5. My question is, if we're seeing that this is from AT&T, and I'm a big fan of, I must confess, of communication, because out here on the Southern Trinity end of thing, communication stinks to high heaven. But my question is this: what type of a tower are we looking at? Are we looking at like a 5G tower, 4G tower? What type of tower are we looking at on this? Because I don't recall seeing that. And that was a question that I kind of had. Maybe I overlooked it. And I was just kind of curious if you could share that, be willing to be able to share that information with us.
Yeah, thank you. I believe that Nick, the project applicant, can speak more to the specifics of the type of tower that's going in and what services it will provide.
Thank you for that. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Heaton? We can
Well,
go
no,
to
well-
the applicant for that answer.
Yeah, we'll have to go to that because I'm very curious because technically there's a lot of mixed reviews in regards to the 5G. I've read a lot of stuff and I'm kind of hesitant because there's mixed reviews on whether the health issue that is involved with 5G. And I was just kind of curious if this is a 5G or they plan on making it a 5G in the future. And that's the question that I was leaning towards. And so that's kind of what I was wondering if we could get that information.
Understood. Thank you, Commissioner Heaton. Is there any other questions for staff?
Yeah, it was communicated that it was for emergency services, but will it be able, is it a cell tower that would be able to help all communication or just emergency services? What type of utilization from the community will be applicable?
The way that it's been described to me is that the intent is to expand the telecommunication network in Hayfork. And as part of that, first responders are going to be able to benefit. But over the course of being able to work on this project, I've been part of emails and received letters of support from different organizations involving first responders, because I believe AT&T is like part of an initiative for like creating more infrastructure for purposes like this. So the exact specifics of the service provided, I think that the applicant can speak to.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Is there any more questions for staff? Okay, at this time, we thank you for those answers and we'd like to move it to public comment at this time.
I think we'll have the applicant speak.
Yes.
Where is he? There he is, right there.
Yes, thank you for correcting me. At this time, we'll have the applicant.
Good evening, everybody. I'm having trouble starting my video so you can see my face, but I am only questioning if you can hear my voice.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, if I cannot have permission to start my video, I will proceed then to introduce myself. So good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Taggis with 51 Wireless on behalf of AT&T. I'll start by, oh, there we go. Thank you very much. It looks like you can't see my video, but that's fine. Let's start by saying that we agree with the findings of staff on this report, and we would only add that AT&T at their sole cost and effort proposed, designed, and applied for this use permit at the behest of California Office of Emergency Systems and for the benefit of the citizens of Trinity County. This cell tower is designed and placed in a manner that will allow for at least 2 additional carriers to co-locate on this tower so that all residents of Trinity County within the Hayfork area will benefit from this tower, in addition to our first responders. So this tower is for the benefit of everyone in the area for use of communications, as well as for our first responders. So we just want to be very clear with that. Secondarily, the question was, I believe from one of the commissioners, is this a 5G tower? So being very clear, 5G means 5th generation.
Correct.
So 4th generation was everyone can browse and surf the internet, make calls and text. 3G, you were able to call and text. 2G was a pager. And 1G was that brick phone that we all remember from the 1980s that was either in a suitcase or in your car. So the G just stands for generation. The concern of health impacts it has been addressed in the third-party engineering report of the EME report, which demonstrates that this tower, being so far away from any public person or even the employees at the transfer station would have zero to negative impacts with health emissions. In fact, if you have a cell phone right now, any of you in the audience at home, if it's in your pocket or if it's next to you, you are receiving more electromagnetic emissions than if you were standing at the base of this tower. And that's how the technology works. So again, I would like to reiterate that if the tower itself has demonstrated through a third-party engineering that it passes the federal government's requirements through the FCC guidelines of electromagnetic emissions, that is not a condition that can be considered at a public hearing. But regardless, we want to work with the jurisdiction as well as with the public and ensure everyone that this tower has met all of the applicable laws, rules, and regulations, both at the county, state, and federal level. The final thing I'd like to address is the comment about, has there been a contract executed between the county and AT&T? And the answer is yes. Prior to getting to today, this point, I believe back in November or December of 2021, a contract was fully executed between the County of Trinity with the assistance of the former CAO, Richard Coons, and AT&T. Within that contract, there are several sections of the agreement that highlight and specify the indemnity with which AT&T has indemnified the county of any acts, either intentional or unintentional, by AT&T, its contractors, assignees, etc., from any damage or liability. So with that, I will gladly stop talking, and I will answer any questions that the commission might have for us.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any questions for the applicant from the commission?
I have a couple questions. So thank you very much for agreeing then to install this that has this public service benefit. I really appreciate that. So is there a fee that AT&T is paying to the county for the use of this property?
That is correct. There is, and it should be a matter of public record since the county is a public entity. AT&T it has signed a 25-year contract with the county, and as part of the agreement to use a small portion of the property, approximately 45 feet by 45 feet squared of lease area, AT&T will be paying the county a monthly sum of rent. That rent escapes me at the moment. I do not have that lease in front of me, but that is a matter of public record. And yes, those sums will go directly to the county for the enjoyment and use of that 45 by 45 square foot lease area.
Great, great. Thank you very much. And then I haven't had experience with AT&T, but I am the assistant chief of the Trinity Center Volunteer Fire Department, and we were working with Verizon to install a repeater on one of their towers. They were going to charge us $50,000 for the engineering study and then a fee of a couple $1,000s a year rent. Does the, and hopefully, I'm assuming AT&T doesn't do that, but does the agreement specify the conditions under which first responders can use the that monopole for, let's say, installation of a repeater or something like that?
No, this contract specifically outlines the agreement between the county and AT&T to allow AT&T to locate, construct, operate, maintain, and gain access to their facility on county-owned property. Any FirstNet responder program is an individual contract per first responder agency. An example of that would be, let's just say, some of our cousins in El Dorado County. There are 28 of these FirstNet towers. And each individual first responder outfit, if you will, whether it be police, fire, paramedics, they have the option, not the requirement, to sign up for AT&T's first responder network. If they do, that is its own individual contract. This here is an individual separate contract that allows AT&T to place their equipment on county-owned land.
So there's no limit to what AT&T could charge a first responder under the FirstNet program to install equipment.
No, that's not accurate. And that
Okay.
is separate from the first responder. Well, let me start that over. That is separate from what we're discussing tonight. But what is required is a federal contract that requires AT&T to charge at market or less than market rate for first responder outfits, organizations within any given county.
Okay, just because we went to Velocity, which allows us to use their monopole for free. So I'm just trying to figure out what the difference would be there. Okay, thank you. That
You're
was the
very
end of my
welcome.
questions.
Yes,
I
and
have a
thank you for
question
your
for-
questions.
Yeah. What is the value of your monopole to AT&T if the county allows you to place it there? What does AT&T value that pole at?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm a leasing and zoning specialist. What I can tell you is at this moment, AT&T has already put in tens of thousands of dollars before they even put in $500,000 to build this tower. And in this county specifically, it is a very low density population county. And the only reason why we are here tonight is Cal OES has leveraged some of their internal resources to bring this tower to Hayfork and Trinity County. And part of AT&T's commitment, not only to provide a larger, grander service throughout the United States, particularly in our rural parts of Northern California. That's why we are here today.
Thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I have a
Is there
question.
any other questions for the applicant?
Yes, I have one. This is Rory.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Nick, two questions. Is there a plan to put more of these throughout the county, or is this the only one that you're planning on installing in Hayfork? And the other question is when do you see this becoming operational, like from breaking ground to when it is available to first responders on that first net you talked about earlier?
Very good question, Commissioner Rory, and thank you for asking that. If I may, the first question, I am not aware of any other towers being proposed in Trinity County. The second part of that question is we have generously worked with the building department of Trinity County, who has graciously agreed to begin the review of our building permit application prior to tonight's hearing. It appears that the standard practice of Trinity County is that the building department will not begin the review of any building permits and their application until the planning department has approved the use. So the breaking ground is ultimately determined upon how quickly Trinity County's building department will complete their review and approve AT&T to break ground. What I can tell you is because this is such a high priority project for not only Cal OES, but for FirstNet, AT&T, and for the good folks of Trinity County, since we're coming up to the summer, is as soon as that building permit is approved, AT&T will work double quick to have their contractor break ground.
Perfect. Thank you for that response and that information. Seems like a wonderful project, and I think we should put it to a vote.
Thanks for that, Commissioner. Is there any other questions for the applicant from the commission?
Can I ask a question for staff? Sorry, I forgot.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Fall.
So under the conditions, it says that the approval of the use permit expires June 23rd, 2025. Is that just for the construction or do they actually have to renew that?
That would just be for the construction. So that's
Okay.
how long they can establish how the amount of time they have to get a building permit and break ground.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Is there any other questions for staff or the applicant? Okay, with that, I'm going to open it to public comment. Is there any public comment? Please state your name for the record.
Veronica Kelly Alves, Douglas City. I would like to commend AT&T for having this type of program to come into rural areas that so need the additional communication power that the urban areas tend to get more of and a little more love of. So we appreciate that consideration, and I'm really grateful that Cal OES reached out. I was a little confused by the answer to Carol's question about the benefit for emergency services, how they would get on it. It sounds like you guys would have to get a contract and pay as a true public service and going into a public utility providing that service. I just would encourage AT&T to discuss with our emergency services a great opportunity to participate on your new tower should that come through. And because we have amazing emergency services here, and your communication power is very powerful, and we need it here in the rural areas. So thank you for your program. Thank you for doing this. And thank you for the great questions and amazing presentation, Skylar. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any other comments from the floor? Is there any comments on Zoom? Okay, if there's no further comments from the public, I'd like to bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioners, feel free to open.
Well, I agree with the comment from the floor. I mean, I would have been helpful to see the actual agreement. And without that, I would really encourage AT&T to be generous when a volunteer fire department with no money is trying to figure out how to expand their emergency communication network. But beyond that, that's really my only comment.
I fully agree with your comments. In fact, I consider Trinity County land very valuable. And, I think it's definitely an asset to have a cell tower in Hayfork, but I also think that AT&T should look at the land we are giving. It does add to their net worth. And if they're investing millions, then it's worth millions. And that being said, that ground is equally worth that. And I do think because of the nature of our community and county, that maybe part of the condition of this use is to allow access to our emergency responders at little or no charge as part of that lease agreement of that land. I think it's fitting. And like you spoke, our local network agency does as such. So I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Is that within our jurisdiction?
I think we could put that condition on this.
Well,
I'm not
I
sure.
think.
Do we
think it
have
would be-
counsel online?
It seems like it would be up to the county to amend the contract that they have with AT&T to be a little bit more clear about what, potentially would be charged. I do think that's beyond our
I
scope.
would agree.
County council is not currently in the participants.
I think that's something that as individual commissioners, we could talk to the county CAO and encourage them of such. I think they're the ones responsible for negotiating the contracts. Well, or whoever is interim, I guess would be this, your
Supervisors.
your supervisor, but yeah, it's out of our scope, land use.
Chairman Sharp,
Yes.
if I could make just something to consider out there from my position as deputy director. it's not like you guys have to vote on this tonight. You could continue and then we could get the answers to these questions. I do apologize for county council not being online. Director Connell did step out to actually see if we can get one of the councils online. If you would like to maybe come back to this in a few minutes, or if you would like to table it until the next meeting, that's completely at your discretion. But I wanted to bring that up.
Thank you for that, Director. I think if you guys would like, I think we definitely need more information before we can decide on this. And if maybe we could get county council online, we can table this for a minute and or move it to the next meeting, but we would need a.
Well, actually, I mean, I do think if there is a signed contract that lays out, you know, the liability issues, the indemnification, it lays out a fee that they're paying. And the only outstanding issue in my mind is how much they might charge first responders to actually, you know, co-locate on the monopole. You know, I'm just not sure, you know, I've installed a repeater, and where it is down in the valley, I don't know that a repeater is going to be useful. It's going to want to be up on the mountaintop. So anyway, I think we actually should move forward with it, because I just think that the issues that we're concerned about are beyond our, if it's already an agreement, it's beyond our ability to like add a condition that says you need to be, you know, developing an agreement or something like that. So
I agree with Commissioner Fall, exactly. I believe that's beyond our purview and that we should encourage and utilize all emergency services we have at our disposal and expedite this process just like we did at the last hearing for the Cal Fire Firehouse.
Any
okay.
other? Do I have a motion?
Okay, so I will move that we adopt a CEQA determination of a class 3 categorical exemption, section 15303, for small new construction projects, which include the construction of new small facilities or structures. And we adopt the recommended findings listed in resolution PC-2022-0-06, and that we approve conditional use permit P-21-32 based on the recommended findings and subject to the conditions of approval listed in Exhibit A to resolution PC-2022-06.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Commissioner Barrett seconds. We need a roll call.
Any discussion before we go to roll call?
Is there any additional discussion? No. Go ahead and have a roll call.
Commissioner Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Heaton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Could you repeat that, please?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Commissioner Sharp, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you, 5-0. Motion passed.
Okay, item 4 is a cannabis control use permit and variance CUPT 3-2019-021 P-19-21. We have a memorandum on that as well. This time I'd like to open it to staff.
Good evening, Chair, Planning Commissioners, members of the public in the audience and on Zoom. I'm going to speak to item 4, which is on the cannabis conditional use permit and variance, CCUPT 3-2019-021 or P-19-21, which is for an application for a type 3 up to 1 acre cultivation and 500-foot property line setback variance. Staff is recommending that this item get continued due to the fact that, so the history on this project is staff has been working with our consultants, SHN, to prepare the environmental document and staff report. And SHN, they finished the environmental document. It got circulated at the state clearinghouse. We received comments for the document, and SHN prepared the staff report. The only part for staff was to add agency comments from agency comment circulation. And so when I was performing the review of the file for the agency comment circulation, I realized that that didn't happen. So that is why staff is recommending that the item get continued, because we find it absolutely necessary to get all relevant agency comments involved in the discussion and review of this project. So due to that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission open the public hearing and take any public comment, close the public hearing, and continue the item to the July 14th, 2022 regular Planning Commission meeting. I just wanted to add, it has been circulated for comment. The comment period is ending very soon, so it should be ready for the July 14th, and we will be able to incorporate the comments that we've received. Thank you, and I will answer any questions to the best of my ability.
Thank you for that. Is there any questions for staff? On Zoom? Okay, with that, thank you for your comments. And I'd like to open it to public comments. Is there any public comment? On the floor? On Zoom? Okay, I'm going to close it to public comment then and bring it back to the commission.
Just like to state that this is in the district that I represent. This farmer was one of the first license holders in the county and has been working on this project diligently for, well, upwards of a half of a decade to bring business into our community. So I'm really looking forward to this project moving forward so that this patient farmer can do what he loves to do.
Any other comments from the commission?
Not at this time.
Okay. Do I have a motion to continue until July 14th?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to continue until July 14th.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it. I apologize, Todd. Go ahead.
All right, can I get a roll call?
Commissioner Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Heaton, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Commissioner Sharp, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0 to continue to July 14th.
Okay, item 5 on the agenda is an ordinance of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Trinity amending Title 17 zoning of the county code to adopt Chapter 17.43I cannabis processing DEV-22-06. The purpose of this public hearing is to seek recommendation from the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors regarding is to establishment of a new commercial cannabis license type that allows commercial cannabis processing of cannabis grown off premises. The proposed ordinance falls within the scope of the cannabis program EIR, which was certified by the Trinity County Board of Supervisors on December 21st, 2020 by resolution 2020-103. A notice of determination will be considered for this project. This time I'd like to turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair Sharp, Director Connell, Chair Sharp, Commission members. I'm going to give you a very light introduction. As most of you know, our ordinance work is being done by Heidi Schuden, who is our contract consultant. She has done the heavy lift for this item and will be presenting it to you. We will be here together to answer any questions you may have throughout it. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Ms. Heidi, who is available on Zoom.
Thank you very much, Director Connell, and good evening to everyone, Chair and Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Yes, I can.
Great, thank you very much. I am Heidi Schuden, Contract Land Use Planner for Trinity County. I'm pleased to present this draft cannabis processing ordinance to your commission. It would establish a new chapter in the county code, chapter 17.43I, as a part of the zoning ordinance. The definition of cannabis processing is trimming, drying, curing, grading, storing, packaging, and labeling of non-manufactured cannabis incidental to cultivation operation. State and local regulations allow cultivators to process their own product on site. A processing license is a separate type of license that allows the holder to perform processing activities at a separate facility or location for either their own product or that of third-party cultivators. This ordinance would also create a self-processing license type that would allow multiple licenses on the same or immediately adjoining property to be processed at one shared facility. Under the proposed regulations, the processing ordinance would require a conditional use permit. The self-processor would not. The processing license would be restricted to general commercial C2, heavy commercial C3, industrial, agricultural, ag preserve, ag forest, and special use districts that allow for industrial. Self-processing would be allowed in any zone in association with a licensed cultivation site. Commercial processing may not be conducted in any prohibited areas, which would include adopted opt-out areas. Self-processing would be allowed in opt-out areas in association with a licensed cultivation site. A proposed commercial cannabis processing plan would be required to be submitted with any application. A minimum of 75% of the cannabis processed at any cannabis processing facility would be required to be grown within the county. And processing would only be allowed to occur indoors with mechanical ventilation controls. On June 6th, the Cannabis Division hosted a virtual workshop with interested cannabis industry representatives to receive input on the draft ordinance. It was a really helpful dialogue, and a summary of those comments and the staff response is provided as attachment B to your staff report. That concludes my presentation. The staff team and I are available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any questions for staff?
I have a question. So the cannabis processing facilities shall not be allowed within the following areas. It says any opt-out area designated by the Board of Supervisors. And that would include the Weaverville CSD, which allows manufacturing. So would it be, is the correct language there, any opt-out area designated by the Board of Supervisors with the exception of the Weaverville CSD? Because you're not going to be allowing processing in the historic district, but outside the historic district in the rest of the CSD where manufacturing is allowed, wouldn't you want to have, if you can do manufacturing, wouldn't you want to also allow processing?
I would say that that is a determination for your planning commission to make and recommending to the board.
I think I caught that as well. WCSD is an opt-out. And I think manufacturing and processing are two different things. One probably creates a pretty heavy odor. The other maybe not so much. And so, I mean, I'm certainly going to recommend not to process in the Weaverville. If the WCSD doesn't, wanted an opt-out, because of the impacts of the basin, I would suggest that the processing of cannabis will have that equal amount of impact in the basin when it comes to odor. Which kind of brings me to my question in regards to that. When it says cannabis processing may only occur, well, yeah, in an enclosed structure with mechanical ventilation, does that mean that, that it has mechanical ventilation with air scrubbers on it to prevent odor? Because it doesn't, I
Yes.
mean, that's not how it reads.
So I might ask for the staff's help here, but this language parallels other language that's in the code. It's my understanding that that is what that requires, but I'm going to look to Sean to see if he could confirm that for me.
Thank you, Heidi. Director Connell, if I may, through the chair. The mechanical ventilation is meant to clean the air prior to it leaving. So while it may not be explicit in this regulation, I know that the standard is that wherever that is, that means carbon filtration, proper mechanical ventilation for the enclosed building.
To avoid ambiguity, do you think that that should be clear in the ordinance?
I think that we could probably add that language in. I don't think it would be an issue at all.
Yes, we can.
I think that there, if I may, Chair.
Yes.
In portion P of regulations, says objections from objective impact property owners may require appropriate conditions for approval. So just so that it is not overly onerous on the particular business, if there is no neighbors that are impacted by the smell, would we force them to have to scrub the odor? Right? So if it's in an area like the Trinity Pines or in any of the rural outreaches, mandating, pardon me, mandating scrubbing the air across the board might be a little bit of a reach.
Do you know what the state regulation for processing is? Does it require filtration?
I'm not sure what Heidi found. I know that the state regulation when it comes to processing is actually extremely loose in comparison to all of the other ones, as they dictate the processing license as a cultivation license type. So I don't believe that they get that specific, just given the nature of how it was brought together. But I know that Heidi has looked through it meticulously, and I can't think that there's anything that's explicit in there.
Director Connell, you're correct. So Commissioner, there's not a requirement for that, nor is there a requirement in the state to do any particular type of odor control. That's established at the local level.
I could see in the regulations saying when appropriate, when in high density locations where the impact of smell would have adverse impacts on the population, certain mitigations would be mandated.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Barrett.
Thank you, Chair Sharp. Why are we setting a set limit of 75% has to be grown on the property? It seems kind of, if they're licensed and they're doing everything by the board and all of their stuff is coming, why are we setting a stipulation that it has to be grown there? If it's all coming from a licensed farm and it's all above board, why are we setting that choke point?
I think it refers to the product being grown in the county, not otherwise. So 75% of the product has to be grown in the county, 25% can be grown out of county and brought in and processed.
Right, and that's my question. Why do we have that limit? A lot of the people that I work with have farms in Humboldt, Mendocino, Trinity. I don't quite get why we're setting up a choke point to limit these people when they're already trying to do everything by the book, and they are. I'm not quite sure why we have that limit. Why do we care where, as long as it's all licensed and they're doing everything properly, why are we setting that it has to come from Trinity?
I think in the staff report, in the staff report, the concern is all the shipping and transport, which if you have a lot of stuff shipped into the county, at a certain point, you don't meet the CEQA and EIR criteria.
I got you. So they're worried about the shipping. Okay. It seems kind of it's too stringent. It seems like another obstacle to an industry that's already in a precarious situation to set another choke point. But if that's the understanding and that's the criteria for setting that, then I guess I understand.
Director Connell, can you add anything to that?
I might also be able to.
That's exactly where I was gonna head. I'm gonna hand that one over to Ms. Heidi.
So there are a couple different layers to this concern. It is overall a policy determination. So this would be appropriate for your commission to weigh in on. Commissioner Fall is correct. This was a consideration that I identified in conducting the environmental review. But because this requires a use permit, that doesn't need to be a mandate of your commission if you don't feel it's an appropriate policy option. Now, having said that, this percentage and this concept of local first has come up, I believe, at your level and as well at the board level. And it appears in your cannabis codes, I want to say in 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 places. So it's something that I don't have the history and background for, but has clearly been something important to this county to promote local grow. So in terms of that background, I can't give you the history on it, but I could say that it appears elsewhere in your code. So to conclude, really 2 issues here. Yes, it does help with the environmental review, and it also reflects a local first policy that appears to be embedded in your code elsewhere.
Well, thank you for that answer. And I do remember that coming up in the cannabis workshop. People referenced, champagne. It can only come from a certain district, and they want to trademark Trinity. But with the whole Emerald Triangle with Trinity and Mendocino and Humboldt, I guess I'm concerned for an industry that is in extreme danger, and I don't know if I understand why it came up, and why people believe putting local made, Trinity, homegrown, if you will. I believe if that's a limiting factor on an industry that's already in danger, if we can help them without setting that such a stringent guideline, I personally think that might be the way to go. Certainly have a local homegrown effort, but maybe make it a little more optional, maybe 50-50 or something, or I don't know what number would be best to suit, but that's my concern.
Chair, if I may add.
Commissioner Barrett?
Participating on policy and of this industry for quite some time, I have been involved in the topics and the discussions about really honoring local businesses, right? Honoring with retail, putting some type of preference to support local farms on retail. Or with regards to cultivation, there is an effort to mandate that all farmers were residents of the county, all in the spirit of encouraging this industry here from the grassroots. With regards to processing, this is a very different concept, because processing has nothing to do with branding. Processing is a commodified effort where you bring your material into the processing facility, it gets trimmed up, it gets broken down, and it gets put in its containers, and then it goes to the next step. So by mandating 75% of product comes from Trinity County, I don't see that benefits the county, the farmers, the processors, the tax benefits. I see how that doesn't benefit anything. And so if we as a county can have any type of strategic advantage, maybe our processing costs are cheaper than Humboldt. So maybe right across, people bring their product from Humboldt to Salyer or to Hawkins Bar, or from Yolo County to the Hettinshaw Valley. And they bring their material there for our locals to process it. So having any mandates of a percentage of processing coming from our county is backwards. encouraging it, giving tax incentives, providing benefits for encouraging our local producers to keep our product here rather than going beyond is another discussion.
Okay. And I do want to keep this to questions for staff and Ms. Shuden at this point, and then we can bring it back for more in-depth discussion. So if we can, commissioners, let's just keep to the subject lines, questions for the staff, and then we'll have time to make our comments on the finite details.
Thank you.
I did have a question, Ms. Shuden, on page 4, under letter M, where it says licenses shall not have been convicted of a serious felony or Schedule 1, 2, 3 felony, excluding non-serious felony convictions for sale, transportation, cultivation of cannabis. And then it says, except if the conviction is on public lands. I'm a bit confused on that. Why would there be an exception?
It's a great question, Chair, and I don't know. This language appears elsewhere in your code. I don't know the history behind it.
I may be able to add a little bit to that. So when you're growing cannabis illegally on your own private property, you're using your water. When you're growing illegally on public lands, the impact is on water that's not yours, and so therefore the penalties and the just the perception is a lot harsher, right? The public lands where people go into the mountains, they use gnarly chemicals and they don't steward their land at all. And so it's a different level of enforcement on public lands versus on your own private property.
No, I get that. So are we saying they're exempt from it? I mean,
No, it is, the language is a little bit clunky and I can certainly clean it up, but my interpretation of it is that if the non-serious felony conviction involved public lands, then they would not be able to get one of these licenses.
okay, because it doesn't read that way. So it almost reads the other way.
It goes negative, positive, negative.
Yes.
A little clunky.
Yeah, so if we could clean that up to make that clear.
Can I have another question on that page? Paragraph J, it says an approved fire plan must be submitted with the use permit application. Who approves the fire plans?
Sean, you want to, Director Connell, you want to take that one? My understanding is there is a template and a process internally for reviewing those, and I believe Director Connell can walk you through that, Commissioner.
Correct. If I may, through the chair, Director Connell. So we have a form generated template. We don't have any of the fire districts that have said that, like, I want to be the person, if it's in my district, that wants to review it. I do believe we use the Weaverville fire chief has reviewed some of it with our connection to environmental health, but that is the game plan, is that it goes through environmental health, my office, as well as the building office to ensure fire safety throughout. And it's a basic plan of how will you handle fires in your facility? What are the training opportunities that you present to your staff? What are those requirements that they know, where fire prevention, where to locate fire extinguishers, and how to call for and prepare for emergency services?
I would.
So basically it's the staff. I mean, if it's outside the Weaverville Fire District, it's just a staff approved plan.
Correct. Through our multiple departments. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I think we need to amend that because there's not a building built commercially that doesn't get approved by a local fire marshal. So you have to actually put together a fire plan on your building plans.
Mhm.
You submit it to the fire marshal. He actually has just about the most beef in the game when it comes to new construction and fire safety. It's never left up to staff to make those determinations. And I don't know why you'd want it that way.
I wish I had more fire chiefs that wanted to review these and that wanted to actually comment on these processes. However, my understanding at this point in time is that we do not have that type of connection to our fire districts. And while you're talking about building out infrastructure, this is part of, these don't necessarily require that there be a new building built. It requires that they address the plan for fire safety and fire prevention within their own facilities. Now,
Sure.
I agree that through the standard building and infrastructure process, should someone come in to be building a new building, but naturally, if it's in a fire, state fire responsibility area, CAL FIRE fire chiefs would have to sign off on those. However, I do not see that mechanism currently in place for cannabis reviews specifically.
Well,
That doesn't
As-
mean we
as-
don't need it.
I
As
would agree.
a-
I just cannot mandate the fire chiefs to review and provide us comments.
but
Um,
so as the fire chief for Trinity Center, the acting chief, can I say, no one's ever asked me? So it would be
Maybe
nice
we
to
will
be,
recirculate that ask of fire chiefs locally to get their buy-in on that. But
well, yeah, so this would be something to bring up at the fire chiefs meeting. I'd be glad to help you put it on the agenda, whether or not, the chiefs want to be notified. If there is some, something that needs an approved plan.
So maybe
I would be the exemption because essentially we're an opt-out area and we may get processing applications from the grandfathered people, but they're gonna essentially be self-processors. So anyway, but that is something to ask the Fire Chiefs Association, who would be interested in being notified at least.
I don't think I've met a fire chief that isn't.
I know I get building permit applications, if there's a large commercial building, we have pre-plans for all of them, so anyway.
So as
Thank you,
such, we're
Commissioner. I definitely
holding
will.
processing facilities to the same threshold of all other commercial buildings.
All over processing buildings. I mean, even like if you had a winery that had a processing facility and they were required to put any kind of fire, any safe in there, the fire marshal would look at it and approve it to make sure it's up to state standards. And it really is for the protection of your workers and staff that are going to be working in there to make sure that they have proper egress, ingress, exit signs, lighted areas when the power goes out because of fire. It is a very important component of all commercial development. I mean, cannabis or non-cannabis.
So maybe not to overtax the volunteer fire chiefs, give the fire chiefs an opportunity to give
I-
them first opportunity. And if they cannot, then it defaults to staff.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, just letting us know.
Since I've never, and I do construction. I've never met a fire marshal or a chief that wasn't just Johnny on the spot to help out. They do take their jobs very seriously.
Well, and to clarify, Director Connell, through the chair, to clarify, I think that we're talking about two different things because I understand as a building inspector and plan reviewer and somebody who worked very closely with my fire chiefs in my previous jurisdictions, I completely understand what you're talking about as far as sprinkler systems, pressurized, making sure that everything is adequately there for infrastructure. This is more of talking about the internal process of the processor license holder and how their staff on site will be prepared and trained in the fire prevention tactics for their specific site. So we're not talking necessarily about the building where at certain thresholds of diagonal lines there needs to be an X amount of egress points. We're not talking about the backup batteries that are required on exit signs. Those are all things that are done during the infrastructure build out and a plan review by our building department. We're talking about the internal staff oriented. How do you prepare the people in this facility should there be a fire? And how do you ensure that they are doing every step required to prevent fires from coming from that building in that location?
Right.
So maybe it would be clearer if it was a fire safety and prevention plan, something like that. I mean, because a fire plan to me means the building too. And so if that's not what you mean, some clarification as far as what, is it just, employee safety and prevention, then that would help.
But I think all fire plans, and I'm not being argumentative here, but I do believe all fire plans that you're speaking of are developed by the state fire marshal.
It would be
Not by,
it'd be chapter 9 of the California Building Code is that we'd be referencing there.
yes.
We're talking about the infrastructure build out, but again, I want to make sure that I'm explaining this. This is meant for the internal staff training purposes.
I get that, but they are, I believe that is developed by the state, right? On how your people get in and out, what's the protocol when a fire happens.
Correct. Splitting hairs, but yes, correct.
Okay.
With regards to allowable zoning districts, section B, number 2, says within the legal boundaries of the following areas, which are in the proximity of high density populations and therefore create substantial risk of a public nuisance. These are all the opt-out areas. And at the opt-out area, there was quite a bit of discussion about the findings being set in sound logic. And so Coffee Creek Volunteer Fire Department District, is not a high density population. So the historic Weaverville district is, but they're, not all of them are high density. So in the allowable districts, the rationale for opting them out, if we could have sound land use as a reason for that, it'd be appreciated.
So this is just a really general comment, but it ties back into this. So where you're talking about the compliance with the general plan, you mentioned under economic, by maintaining privately owned prime timber, encouraging heavy resource-related industrial and service. But
I'm sorry, Commissioner, where are we at?
I'm on
Page two.
page 2,
Of the
general
staff
plan.
report Or
Staff
of the
report.
ordinance?
It's a
It is
staff
the
report.
staff report, page 2, the general plan consistency. One of the things that you leave out is that's an economic goal in the general plan is by encouraging tourism. The Coffee Creek and Trinity Center opt-out areas, one of the reasons that those are opt-out areas is because those parts of the county, the economy is largely recreation-based. And so in some areas, certain commercial cannabis activities are not compatible with, family, wilderness, recreation experiences. So
What was the second area? You said the Coffee Creek, and what was the second one, Commissioner?
the Trinity Center CSD.
Thank you.
So to answer, Duncan's point, it's not just high density areas where certain activities in opt-out areas are not compatible. It's also areas where you're trying to promote a certain type of recreation. And so, you may want to include that in your general plan consistency, that part of the general plan that says by encouraging tourism, because that would provide some justification for why those opt-out areas don't have certain cannabis types of activities, which to me would include processing. Does that make sense? I don't know. Anyway.
I agree. A sound rationale for why it's prohibited in the ordinance is necessary.
That's good. Is there any other questions for staff?
Yes, with regards to on page 3 of the staff report, regulations B says cannabis processing facilities should be located only in zones that are specifically provided for this use. The facility shall not be on prime agricultural soils as determined by the planning director and her designee. And so I guess my question is with regards to prime agricultural soils and the need to preserve those soils because we don't have many of them. But does that same policy apply to any other business? If I owned a piece of ag zoning and I wanted to create a processing facility to process my hay or my grapes or any type of agricultural crop, would I be prohibited from utilizing my land if it was located on prime ag soils?
I don't know the direct answer to that question, to be honest with you.
I don't think we have a lot.
I mean, prime soils are usually regulated at the state level. So they're much higher than our local jurisdiction. They actually identify those soils that are meant for California agriculture. In my experience, it hasn't triggered with cannabis yet, but cannabis is not, as we know, it's a commercial regulated agricultural byproduct type of thing. So I don't know the actual implications on that.
Yeah.
I'm hoping maybe Ms. Shuden might be able to step in and provide a little oversight, but I'm not aware of anything that would restrict at that level.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I think what you're asking, Commissioner, is whether there's any other place in your local code that applies something similar to a business in an ag district or ag area. And I'm not familiar with the rest of your code, and I haven't searched that item, so I'm not able to answer that question for you tonight.
Yeah, and it's not just any business. I'm not talking about like a mechanic opening up a shop. This is an agricultural crop, and this is a processing of that agricultural crop in an agricultural zone. For instance, in Ferndale, there are dairies where there's processing of the milk, right? In Scott Valley, there are hay facilities where it's processed and stored next to the farm. And so I'm just wanting to make sure that we are treating this industry as fairly as we would treat any other industry.
So I'm dredging up my memory as the former, farm advisor employee. I don't think we have very many designated prime agricultural soils. I think it's very limited geographically.
Mhm.
So
It's true. We actually don't have much private lands anyway. And yeah, totally. We can discuss that.
Thanks, Duncan.
I guess also I would like to understand why it was recommended by staff that that we would utilize a conditional use permit for a business that is processing a material in a footprint of an area where the zoning seems to be consistent. Why would that not be just a director's use permit?
because it's not.
I'm sorry, the part you said before, why wouldn't it be a director's use permit? I didn't fully understand that part. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my understanding is this is a very simple process of, it's a building, the material is hung, the material is processed. It's not heavy industrial. There's no smell coming out of it because it would be scrubbed. It's not a really impactful type of business. And so I'm wondering why staff chose to have it be a conditional use permit versus a director's use permit, especially in light of how long it takes for a conditional use permit to go through in our county.
So separate from the amount of time it takes in any specific jurisdiction to get through a use permit process, the reason in my mind why this would be appropriate to be a conditional use permit, there's a couple reasons. One relates to this issue of where's the material coming from. So your environmental impact, your programmatic environmental impact report assumed self-processing, which doesn't involve transport. You're basically processing what's grown on the site. And whether you use the 75% limit or no limit at all, depending on where you go with your policy recommendation to the board, there is still going to be some product that is brought to the facility from off-site, and that needs to be analyzed appropriately as a part of the application process. And there could be other incidental impacts associated with that, Commissioner, that would also get captured if you had a conditional use permit process, whereas if you don't, there's no public hearing, and the process for people to become involved, it kind of switches the tables to people appealing a decision rather than it going through a hearing process to discuss those impacts and ensure that they're properly mitigated.
Okay, thank you. And so just for clarity, it's not necessarily just the importation of material it's the type of material and the perception of that material coming in. For instance, like a grocery store gets shipments every other day, right? A gas station gets shipments. And I'm not sure if a grocery store or a gas station or the farm store, which has deliveries and semis coming in, would need a CUP for that, just based on transportation.
Well, if I understand correctly, part of it is the EIR did not anticipate anything other than self-processing. And so by allowing this kind of something that wasn't included in the EIR, you're going to need to have a higher level of scrutiny. Am I saying that right?
I think so. Basically, you need a mechanism, sir, to make sure that impacts that I can't determine right now have been considered are considered. And the way to do that is a conditional use permit. In land use planning theory, the concept of a use permit is that the use is appropriate in an area, but it has aspects of it that need to be addressed, especially because of its circumstances, or you don't have a programmatic EIR that looks at overall impact, or maybe cumulative impacts haven't been analyzed. So typically the purpose of the use permit is to provide that hearing process and public input to allow you to do that. If the programmatic EIR had looked at, I'm going to use the term regional processing. That's the way I think of these, as opposed to processing on each individual site. If the programmatic EIR had looked at that, I think you would be in a better position to consider what you're interested in, but I'm not seeing how we're covered here without a use permit. And in particular, if the percentage of local requirement is changed or eliminated, which again is within your policy purview, to me, that would reinforce the need for a use permit to ensure that those impacts are addressed on a project by project basis to ensure full CEQA compliance.
And when you said use permit, you mean conditional use permit?
Yes, conditional use permit, which involves public noticing and a hearing. That's the main difference between that and the director's permit. So the director's permit, the analysis is done in-house. It may still involve environmental review if that's necessary, but there isn't a hearing, and essentially a letter is issued. I don't know how many days your jurisdiction uses, but it's common to say that if there's no appeal of the letter within 15 days, 10 days, 20 days, whatever the jurisdiction picks, then the determination is approved, basically. So a use permit, a conditional use permit, flips that process and requires a mandatory hearing and public opportunity to have comment. So it's a little bit more of a transparent process when you have a situation where you may not have coverage of environmental impacts by your programmatic document.
Thank you for that. Do we have any other questions for staff or Ms. Shuden?
I have one there. This is Todd from District 5. On page 3, items number in the regulations C and D, it talks about cannabis processing shall not be allowed within 1,000 feet of youth-oriented facilities, school, church, or residential treatment facility, unless a variance is obtained. Same thing in D. It's like the cannabis processing facility shall not be within 500 feet of an authorized school bus stop. Unless, yep, sorry, unless a variance is obtained. And one of my thoughts that I have here, it's like, why should we even put that in the thing if we're going to say we can do a variance? It's like, let's just scratch the thing of the variance, because you know what? It's like, because a lot of we've had so many circumstances where we have the rules and the regulations, but then someone will come in and say, you know what? But I want a variance on this. And it's like, and then it's like, this will hopefully eliminate some of the stuff of things keep coming before us, where then they come back to us and say, it's like, okay, we're establishing something right here. And it's like, boom, it's going to be 1,000 feet from a church or a school or a residential thing. And we agree with that. It's like, let's scratch the variance thing so we don't keep getting these things coming back. That's kind of one of the thoughts that's coming to my mind, because it's like, if we're going to just keep giving variances to a lot of things, it's like, let's just change it to 500 feet to the begin with and then scratch the variance, because it's like, so that we don't have the continual thing coming back and knocking on our door and eating up time. That was kind of a thought that has crossed my mind over this this whole thing that I wanted to throw out there.
Thanks, Commissioner Heaton. Is there any other questions for Ms. Shuden or staff? Okay, at this time, I'm gonna open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment from the floor?
Hi, Veronica Kelly Albies, Douglas City. Took quick notes. Internet was out most of the day for everybody, so I couldn't print out my stuff. But someone had mentioned tax benefit to processing. Is there a tax benefit to processing within the county on other people's product? On the 7525, unless you do kind of keep that, I think you guys are on the right track on the CEQA. Once you invite more traffic into any area, that is a CEQA finding. That's a land use finding, as it could be inappropriate for the area. Sorry, my notes are all over the place. Because I wrote, how does adding product and commercial activity from other entities not affect traffic, water use, even just the mere processing with more employees and water, sewer? And does OSHA review the employment facility plan in regards to that fire safety plan? They might be an entity for that, since it's an employee for existing buildings. And we talked about that for employees. Does this ordinance allow for a processing on a site that does not include other cannabis activity? Like, could someone set up a processing center and that's just what they do? I wasn't clear on that, and it may be in there. So if I'm asking bogus questions, I'm sorry. Just trying to get a clear understanding. And I wanted to make a note on opt-outs were established with sound land use findings. That's how they became the opt-out areas. I really believe that opt-out areas should be respected and in that sense. But as was just at the Board of Supervisors meeting, there was some determination about the language of the opt-out. And so that is something you might want to consider as you're putting this finding forward as well. Sorry, grab the next one. And grocery stores, other entities with shipping, any of that, all of that is part of a CUP. They have to go through CUP. Think about the grocery outlet that came before the Planning Commission. That was all part of it because they want to know you're going to have shipping, people are going to be delivering things. And that was all one of the reasons they had to have the CUP. And I would imagine many others like that do have to do a CUP, even in our own ordinances, restaurants and things that are going to have deliveries. Some of that is, depending on what zone they're in, is covered on CUP. I think it just determines where it's at. Grocery outlet. And on the licensees not having been convicted of serious felony, are employees held to those same standards? I don't remember what it is for cultivation or any of that, but I know they have the standards and stuff, whatever they should match, and just, ID, make sure it's good. Because there is, and the other thing I had is we talked about manufacturing and processing being the same. I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. Thank you. That's all I have to do is look at you, Duncan. Thank you. Because I'm not sure that they are, because they have different things that might need to be mitigated over here because it's not a problem with this one. I'll just quit talking on that one. Thank you. I think those are the main notes that I listened to and caught. And thank you for all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Did it.
Is there any other public comments from the floor?
Good evening, Commissioners. John Brower from Junction City. This is pretty straightforward, and staff did a pretty good job getting it this far. There's really only a couple things that I'd like to speak to. One is on page 2F, any opt-out zone designated by the Board of Supervisors. I think Carol got it right with the calling out the Weaverville Community Services District. We need to exempt that. It's appropriate in the industrial zoning of Weaverville for sure. On the next page, page 3, that cannabis B under regulations, that cannabis processing facilities be located only in zones that specifically provide for this use. There are no zones in Trinity County zoning code that or zoning districts definitions that specifically provide for this use. But maybe this document changes that by listing those zoning districts elsewhere. But I'd just like some clarity on that, and you might want to strike that sentence if not. Next one down, C, under regulations on page 3. Cannabis processing facilities shall not be located within 1,000 feet of a youth-oriented facility, school, church, or residential treatment facility unless a variance is obtained. Commissioner Heaton, that was a good question you asked, but the state mandates a 600-foot setback from schools and youth-oriented facilities, but not from residential treatment facilities or churches. Our setbacks would be up to 1,000 feet and include also churches and residential treatment facilities. So I think that's why the variance is warranted in this case. And there's very, very few parcels in Trinity County that can meet the zoning requirements and also fit within 1,000-foot setback. So if it's not a problem for whoever the setback is from, then it seems like a variance could be appropriate if they're able to get approved by the Planning Commission. And it's not an annual variance, so it'd be a one-time deal. But that does seem appropriate in this case. Also, the 500 feet from an authorized school bus stop, unless a variance is obtained. Every little wide spot in the road in Trinity is a school bus stop, and that's where the commercial zoning is, and that's where the parking is, and that's where the good roads are, and that's where the employees are. And we're essentially talking about a building with some employees that are, likely skilled trimmers. It is an important economic opportunity for our community. We have countless, in my experience, mostly working mothers that do the lion's share of this work. And
Thank you for your comments, John.
if you'd like, Commissioner Sharp, I could speak to the criminal stuff too. I know where that came from in state regs and stuff. If you'd like me, allow me another minute, I could speak to that, give you a little history on it.
I think we're good. I think it was clarified by Ms. Shuden. Thank you for your time. Is there any other comments on Zoom or on the floor? On Zoom?
Trinity's sun grown. They're unmuted. Trinity's sun grown. We can't hear you.
Okay.
I'm going to come back to you. Rhoda Kane.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Rhoda. We can hear you.
Hi, my name is Rhoda Kane. Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners, District 1, Trinity Center area. Today, I'm asking the Commission to put aside personal opinions to make sound land use decisions. I'd like to remind people it is not your job to decide if this is or is not a valid or moral form of income. What is your job is to decide if a property zone is qualified for use by small businesses with normal traffic and effects associated with non-retail business operations. I'd like to talk about the 2575 thing a little bit. This just right now, this is kind of unfeasible. I agree with it. I'm 100% on board with an idea like that, but currently it's not feasible with the amount of licenses that exist in the county. And then I'd like to talk about 17.43I-020 allowable zoning districts. B2, it states areas which are in proximity to higher density populations. So I am sure that some of these opt-out zones, that information is correct, but I will specifically talk about Coffee Creek and Trinity Center opt-out zones because they are not higher density population areas. Also, there are other non-tourist businesses in the area, such as giant logging trucks going up and down the road all the time. And I don't know if these are conducive to tourism any more or less than cannabis. And any opt-out area designated by the Board of Supervisors, we don't have findings for opt-outs that don't exist yet, so we can't make those rules. But yeah, it's the findings for the Trinity Center and Coffee Creek opt-out zones in particular are not correct, and they're not accurate. And repeating the same incorrect information over and over and over again doesn't make it true. As far as traffic goes, like,
Did we lose her?
I think we lost her. Rhoda?
on the road. And so I just want to make sure that we're actually making decisions that are based. I just want to make sure that we're making decisions that are actually based in land use. It seems like I actually went out of, you couldn't hear me for just a minute. But as far as traffic goes, I'd like to talk about the Cisco and Budweiser deliveries, FedEx, everybody up here does online shopping, logging trucks. So to say that the traffic is inconducive to tourism is quite a stretch. But, and then also I'd like to talk about.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Kane. Yeah, go ahead and we'll give her another minute.
And then also I'd like to talk about 0.040 regulations. Of course, the 75% just simply not feasible right now. Then on page 13, number 9, we talk about 1,000-foot setback to minimize traffic and road impacts. And so that's again where we come to with all the other things that happen, like minimizing traffic and road impacts from these small few cars that are going to be coming to work at a business inside the building. Anyways, thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Kane. Appreciate your comments.
Trinity Sungrown, are you there? Hearing him. Okay, we'll move on. Matt Jefferson.
Hello, Commission. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
This is Matthew Jefferson from Trinity Center. I would like to start by saying to please remember that your job is to make sound land use decisions, even if you disagree with the medicine that we do produce. As I go through this staff report, the first thing I come to as an economic goal is to maintain as many privately owned ag parcels as possible. Then we get to section 3, allowable zoning districts. Section B cancels out 55% of the privately owned land in Trinity County using cultivation opt-outs with no negative findings based on land use, none. These are not high population. Section 2 states this will bring local economic opportunity, but only to half our county. Why is this? This is not fair to our citizens. Opt-out zones are for cultivation. Processing has none of these impacts stated for creating opt-out zones. The staff report has 0 findings to base an opt-out on. If we're saying odor, it's in a closed building, require an air filter. There's no public letters, there's nothing. Report is also not recommending regional processing. This is a strange comment, as only Trinity farmers will use it. Transport is billed hourly, out-of-county farmers are not going to use it. The only possible environmental impact is road traffic, but it would be way less than any other local business. This is small cars and Sprinter vans. This is a private closed facility that is not open to the public. It does not affect community character negatively. It brings jobs. The impact is massively less than a store, gas station, restaurant, post office, campground, winery, or home business. If we're opting out of processing based on land use issues? Shouldn't all these be businesses be banned too? Please make fair land use decisions free of bias and discrimination, and please remove section B. The rest really looks good. I really do support this ordinance. It will be very beneficial for the cannabis industry and Trinity County's economic prosperity. Just to touch on the 75-25 thing, having to source 75% of your cannabis in Trinity County could cause a huge delay and burden on any facility like this opening right now, as we have very few permitted farmers. This could be added in the future when the program is full. And please, we need to stop being scared of this plant. We do not hurt tourism. I live in an opt-out and tourists beg me for tours and tastings all day long. Cannabis is a beautiful, healing, medicinal plant. These opt-out zones are not going to last. Love and progress will prevail. Please support the regulated cannabis industry in Trinity County. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else on Zoom? No? Okay. This time I'd like to close the public comment portion and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioners, feel free to engage.
I'd like to clarify. So 1743I allowable zoning districts, paragraph B. I think we would want to add the opt-out areas that have been designated by the Board of Supervisors, the Rush Creek Estates and the Lewiston expansion. I mean, they have been permanently adopted, so they have equal standing with the ones that are listed. And we can, I know there's a concern about what is the legal boundary for those. And so maybe we do the same thing as the Board of Supervisors and include the APN list like they did for the ordinance that the Board of Supervisors passed, something that provides some definition of what Rush Creek Estates and Lewiston expansion opt-out areas are. I agree that it's a little confusing to talk about the proximity to higher density populations, because I don't think that's the only reason that opt-out areas are created. We had a whole list of criteria. And so I think I'm wondering if we can't just delete that language and just list the opt-out areas, which have through all the different criteria, community character and all that kind of stuff, have expressed that they want to limit the types of cannabis activities within those opt-out areas. But I do think we need to clarify that in the Weaverville CSD, processing could be allowed, excluding the historic district. So anyway, I would like to maybe work on that and clarify that for people.
With regards to the Weaverville Community Service District, that is a big portion of industrial and heavy industrial zoning. It is a central hub in our county. Three different, 299 West, East, and Highway 3 all kind of come together there. So it seems like it would be appropriate to minimize.
Tell me exactly what I need to know.
Can you mute that, please?
To minimize the travel and transportation. So I agree with Commissioner Fall. With regards to just blanketly adding processing to all opt-outs, each particular opt-out zone opted out for particular reasons, such as water, such as road impacts, such as the particular ecological and geological character of their particular community or cultural aspect of their community. So to broadly just say no processing in any opt-outs implies without any land use specifically for reasons implies a level of segregation. It implies a level of, we don't want this type of business here. And I would like to have more sound land use specifically for each opt-out zone. In particular, the Rush Creek Estates is all rural residential based on my understanding. It would be, there's no zoning that would be allowed. So when we're eliminating business from 55% of our county, we need to have sound specific land use, no matter how long that takes us.
I think there's some ag in Brush Creek.
In the estates?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
I think, I agree with sound use. When we have our findings and that we base it on solid land use, but we also have to consider community characteristics in land use. And that does, have weight. And I believe a lot of these opt-out areas were based on that, what the community characteristics were. At the time that these were just, they were put out. These were not developed on the cuff when they were brought to the floor and decided they were going to be opt-outs. There were many people speaking up. Just because they're not now, they had their voice heard, and that's how these were created. So I don't think we're lacking in findings. Maybe we're lacking in historic documents of how these were created to begin with. But I think there were those findings at those initial times. I wasn't around for that, so I wouldn't know. And I haven't seen those, but I've certainly heard from enough people that say they did speak up, and that's how these were created.
Speaking about just not wanting it in their community, that's the community character. We don't want these types here.
I don't know that, I can't speak to that. I wasn't there. Again, I didn't, again, community characteristic can mean a lot of things. Doesn't mean people are biased one way or another.
If we're to eliminate a particular business from 55% of our private land, we need to really be specific on the opt-out zones and why, not just across the board, not on 55% of our parcels, but specifically if Rush Creek Estates doesn't want it because of community character, and that is the biggest weight, is their culture does not appreciate this type of business here, okay. But to broadly all opt-out zones, 55% of our land, private land, nope, we don't allow it, is the antithesis of what I think that we as a commission are supposed to be doing here.
Well, when you think about that, they'll think of a gas station. Okay, I would suggest, and I'm not sure on this, I don't know, but I would suspect that 90% of the land in our county is not open for a gas station. Are we biased to them? No, it's, I believe it's that way because people don't want a fueling station everywhere. They
That's
just want
particular zoning, right? There's certain zoning that allows for gas stations.
Right.
This is across the board. This is all different. This is all different types of zoning. So I just want to make sure that we're absolutely clear on why the Bucktail subdivision in sound land use policy does not allow this, right? And so this is something that I was hung up on with regards to the opt-out zones. We pushed it through. It went to the Board of Supervisors, and they were just as hung up on it, and they kicked it back to us. So this is where we get it right.
Well, so consistency is one of my things. And so it does vary, but if you look at what is allowed, these opt-outs have pretty much said you also can't have retail non-storefront. You can't have testing. You can't have manufacturing, with the exception of parts of the Weaverville CSD. So, I think what we're doing here with processing is making that consistent, with all the other uses.
I do agree with Commissioner Heaton on variances. I think we need to write code that is sound, that isn't ambiguous. The thing with variances is that you might have a variance from the neighbor today, but when the neighbor sells his property or the owner of the permit sells their property, maybe that doesn't exist anymore, and that symbiotic relationship isn't there anymore. We need to create stuff that doesn't allow all these what ifs. Just write an ordinance that is, 1,000 foot, 600 foot, whatever it's going to be. But let's just write it so that we don't create issues between people buying and selling parcels and properties, that somebody used to agree with, but now they don't, or they had an argument one night over a beer and now they're not happy with it, so they don't want to allow the variance. It just seems like we're setting up for failure with variances. And it is absolutely, and we've had this discussion many times with many different directors. This is absolutely the wrong tool and misuse of the meaning of a variance. There should be an exception. They shouldn't be written in as a rule. And I think we need to steer away from that, steer back to sound planning that doesn't always have these exceptions. It doesn't happen anywhere else, it doesn't seem, from all the people I've asked. We're kind of unique that way with the cannabis program, and I think we need to get away from it and get back to just creating sound policy that doesn't create issues down the road. So I would definitely want to recommend that we remove variances, come up with whatever meets everybody's satisfaction as far as what the distance may be, but stick to it and have people stick to it when they develop. It makes for good neighbors and it makes for good policy.
If I could add a way to simplify that would be just to stick with the regulations of the state. So if the state says 600-foot setbacks, we just go along with the state. But if we're going to also eliminate it from churches and youth and residential facilities, and then we add an extra 400 feet on top of it, it complicates it. And unfortunately, we are not a county that is shaped like a checkerboard like Yolo County. We are a county that is, every single property is very complex and different and diverse. And every 1 acre license that has come before us, every single one has needed a variance. And these are businesses that bring in, employ a lot of people. So by just sticking with the state, we could eliminate that variance aspect.
So if I can point out, so, our current ordinances, so there are limitations for cultivating cannabis. This is not processing, testing, manufacturing, all the other things. But for cultivation, it says that applications will not be approved for cultivation of cannabis in the following areas: within 1,000 feet of the youth-oriented facility, school, church, or residential treatment facility, or 500 feet of an authorized school bus stop. And there isn't a variance. So that's for cultivation, but right now you can't get a variance, at least according to that, for within those distances. So I would kind of agree with Todd. It should be clear.
Strike it and keep it consistent. Commissioner Heaton, you had a comment?
Well, yeah, it's like and I'm sorry, it's like the noise that you were hearing in the background where I'm at, it's like it's noisy. That's why I keep unmuting myself or keep muting myself. So I'm sorry to the ladies to keep doing this to them, but so that y'all didn't have the all the noise in the background. So I apologize for that. But yeah, my thought was, it's like, what it is like, because like when John brought up that it was 600 feet or whatever, and then Carol mentioned that it was like, okay, we have the 1,000 and other things. It's like, all that my big desire is like, if we can come up with something that's standard, and then it's like cut and dry, and it was like no ands, ifs, or buts about it. It's like, this is what it is. And it's like, if you can't find something within this specific thing, there's like, then that'll eliminate a lot of headaches for us, because we have so many variances that come down us. If we can come up with a standard thing that we could all agree on, it was like, I think that will really streamline things, and that could really save us some headache down the road. And just listening to where somebody will be like, like a time before we had somebody say, oh, we found the perfect property except for this one situation right here. And it's like, well, that one situation wasn't the perfect property because you didn't meet all the qualifications. And so if we can get to something, whether it is the state standard, or if we just stick with like when Carol was reading with what it is in the other things, if we can just get down to that and just remove that variance, I think that will be that's another area that I think will be a big help right there.
And I would be open to eliminating variances if we minimize the setback requirements. Because as a commission, we're commissioners over the poorest county in the state. And we, like somehow, somewhere, we have to allow business to exist. And so if there's a place where it works on every aspect except for one particular neighbor, and that neighbor is okay with it, and that business employs people, my golly, we need to be able to encourage places to employ people. Every one of these farms, every one of these processing facilities is an employer. I mean, I can't speak for other portions of the county, but the downriver community is really, really needing employment opportunities for people, for like John Brower said, for the single moms, right? This is trimming. Trimming has been done in our community for decades. And for the people who have been a part of the culture, we know who is the trimmers. And it's trimmers are oftentimes, people that do not have the highest education and that are looking for a consistent job. And, but while we're creating these 1,000-foot elimination zones, after we're encouraging to eliminate it out of 55% of the private holdings, I've got no maps in front of me to show me where does it fit? Like 1,000 feet from any church. I'm wondering why we're accommodating for churches. I think isn't there supposed to be a separation of church?
Churches are youth-oriented facilities.
But this is a facility that is in a warehouse that has no smell coming out of it, that has people driving in to work and driving out to work. There is absolutely, there's no advertising, there's no smell, there's no buds rolling down the street. If somebody from the church wanted to come and knock on the door and get some product, that's not available. So they can't see the product, they can't smell the product. So why are we treating this like it is radioactive?
So I'm hearing an inconsistent thing on the smell. So earlier we said that you were saying you didn't want to require the requirement to eliminate smell if you're out in the middle of nowhere. But now you're saying these facilities would be required to eliminate smell?
If it's within 500 feet, if what I mentioned is in densely populated areas, right? So if it's next to a youth-oriented facility or a gas station or someplace where the smell would have impact on the neighboring community.
That would be a church.
Yes. There we go. If it is in Burt Ranch on top of Underwood Mountain on ag zoning with no neighbors, why would we put an onerous regulation that serves no function? That's what I meant.
Well, I think to speak to that, just because you are on top of a mountain with not a neighbor in sight does not stop smell from travel. And I think we all have experienced that, certainly in the basin, certainly anybody that is downwind of any farm. And as you condense that into a processing plant, then you're condensing that smell and that intensifies. So depending on if there's cool air and the drift is going downhill, you might be greatly impacting somebody a mile away. You don't know. But we do know that it travels. And I mean, we're all smart enough to know that that is an absolute truth. That it does travel and it doesn't stop just because you're a mile up on the hill.
Have you smelled cannabis grown a mile away?
I have.
I did not know that the smell would travel that far.
You can actually, I can speak to many instances being out, and I hunt a lot. I've been up in Trinity Center, actually below the winery, when there was grows above the winery on, what is it? On Wildcat Peak, right below Wildcat Peak. I was actually down on the creek there. There was a grow at least a mile up on the hill. And that air traveled absolutely all the way down. And air is, part of hunting. So we do follow those drafts morning and night. Falls in the morning, goes up at night, and you can absolutely smell it. There's no doubt in my mind.
I would like to see some maps, 1,000-foot setbacks, without maps showing where it would be allowed I would be navigating through this blind. I would like to see maps where we could see where in Hayfork, with all the mitigations, where it would be allowed. And in pretty much in everywhere in the county where there's a population with this type of zoning.
And I think that's a great point, Duncan. I think you've brought up something that, that we are wholly lacking as a commission, which is an accurate general plan. Because if we had a good general plan, we would probably have identified areas that these kind of things can go on that are, conducive to the people around it and the areas. And without a general plan, I don't know how we accurately, make decisions based on unfactual stuff and not an accurate general plan to work with. And we brought that up on many issues many times. And this is just another one of them that.
Well, we brought this up with retail, because the same criteria would apply for retail. And yeah, there is in Hayfork, there is a limitation between the school. If you're 1,000 feet away from the school, it does really narrow the
corridor,
the parcels that are available for something like this.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that is an essential factor to a business, which is a major economic driver in our community. I don't feel comfortable making a decision on this without actually having it in front of me, a map of what it looks like. If there is even a place in Weaverville that can fit within that, or Junction City, or anywhere in the Downriver District with these types of setbacks.
I would agree with Duncan on that also. We can also require odor mitigation as a condition of approval. I find it very difficult to set these stringent guidelines without clear definition on how it will affect real impact on a business that we should be embracing in Trinity County.
Also, with regards to the 75% being product grown within the county, specifically at this point in time, I would recommend that we just strike that. I'm hoping that we want to encourage.
What was that?
It'd be on page 3, 17.431.040, under regulations number E.
But then wouldn't you have to go back and do some CEQA analysis for all the transportation and everything? That would really extend the time frame.
I think Ms. Shuden got this on point. I think it needs to be in there.
So we can't, the business cannot, based on CEQA, cannot bring any product from outside the county.
25%.
More than 25%. So in a Sprinter van, bringing product from another county to be hung in a facility, to be dried and processed in an enclosed warehouse would have an environmental impact that would initiate CEQA.
Well, you're making an assumption.
No,
So-
I'm not making an assumption. I have an understanding of the industry, and
So-
I know what a processing facility entails. And so it's a warehouse, and in that warehouse, a warehouse probably the size of your warehouse. Did you need a CUP to build your warehouse?
No,
Commissioner
but
Sharp?
it was actually zoned for what I built, and I stayed within my
And what
ounces.
was the zoning?
It was commercial.
Commercial, right? So, but you have commercial activity, you have trucks coming in and out of your place, deliveries, employees. How many employees do you have?
14,
14 employees that all travel from all over the county?
correct?
Do you need and you do not need a use permit for your business?
I think this is irrelevant, and I noticed Ms. Shuden has her hand up. Maybe she can answer the question.
Thank you. I wanted to just get to the question being asked by Commissioner McIntosh. So on the 75-25% item, I wanted to reiterate that in my view, that is a policy determination that your planning commission can weigh in on in your recommendation to the board. And in my opinion, as long as you retain the requirement for a conditional use permit, whether or not there is an effect at a project level basis that has not been covered by your programmatic EIR would be examined with each use permit. And it's not possible for me to say to you generally right now, yeah, that wouldn't be a CEQA impact, or yes, it would be a CEQA impact, because the point of looking at it at the project level is to consider all of the circumstances of the particular site and the project being proposed. So Commissioner, your point about maybe there would be a situation where even though a processor was taking in product grown elsewhere, it could be demonstrated that there was no additional impact. I believe that that could be the case. And that's what you would be able to accomplish through the use permit.
Thank you. I see, like in the district where I live, there is an industrial zoning. There's an old mill site in High Palm. There's one in Burt Ranch. There's one in Salyer. It seems like it would be very appropriate with those businesses being on the Humboldt County line, and it would be, there is a larger population base right across the line. I just don't see any justification to inhibit importing material with the CUP.
I think what she's saying is that you could amend that with the CUP. You could bring the change in. Back to my point.
I think she's saying it's policy that we as a board can bring forth our recommendations.
I understand that.
But isn't it up to staff then? If someone comes in and they say, I have one Sprinter van a day, that's a condition of the permit, then they may not need to do some sort of CEQA review. But if somebody else comes in and says, I'm going to have 10 Sprinter vans a day, and that's what their permit allows, they may be required to do the CEQA if they're on a gravel road and all that kind of stuff. So it's just going to be up to staff.
So the way it works is all of these discretionary approvals require CEQA. So they would all have to complete a CEQA checklist and provide enough information for the staff to make the initial determination whether or not the programmatic EIR covers the activity and why, or if it doesn't, what additional conditions would be needed to ensure that no impact occurs, and an appropriate CEQA document to go with that. That could be an exemption, it could be a negative declaration, it could in some circumstances be a focused environmental impact report at the project level. There's, I could speculate with you based on my experience in the field, but it's somewhat irrelevant because it would depend on the absolute circumstances of the site and the project. And so your use permit process ensures that there's a mechanism to make that happen. And yes, the initial CEQA determination is typically done by staff. That's the case in every jurisdiction in which I work. But the ultimate decision is made by the decision maker. So if it's a director use permit, the ultimate decision is made by the director, and that's appealable to the planning commission and then to the board. If it's a conditional use permit, it goes to your planning commission to make the decision, and that's appealable to the board. So it's just a matter of procedure who it goes to and who makes the decision, but the preliminary work is always done by staff, and it may be done as well by consultants who are overseen by staff. That's not an uncommon way to accomplish that. On the 75-25 and I don't mean to interject, but your board, excuse me, your commission may want to consider in deliberating this, that you could consider if you want to remove it as a requirement, but retain it as a strategy or as a focus, or to encourage it. That's also an option in front of you in making your decision and recommending this up to the board. Thank you.
Well, thanks. That's a great clarification.
Thank you for that.
You know, if the environmental document is sound, right? If it's, if it's a CUP, it goes through that environmental document process, hearing, can't have negative environmental impacts. So I don't know why we'd even have that in the ordinance.
I think, the one thing that one of the commenters brought up was the tax benefit. And I could see that there. Because we are talking about jobs for Trinity County, not Humboldt. And if we are bringing in product out of county, what is the tax benefit of the county if we're not regulating it? And what is the, obviously what is the liability to the county as well if we're not benefiting from that tax benefit? Do we, are we assigning more police, more fire, more medic, more road improvements for them using our roads? I mean, there has to be some kind of a positive impact to our county for bringing outside product in that they're going to benefit from and get tax dollars from and get wage dollars from. It can't just be a free-for-all. We need to garnish some money from the coming in, which is why I think that 75-25 is probably important to regulate.
That's a really good point. And so for clarity, let's say someone, an industry, a processing facility that is in Hawkins Bar, and let's say like the old Hawkins Bar store area, and it employs 25 locals to process the material. The more material that's brought in there, the busier they're kept. The more hours they have, the more processed material. I'm not sure processing is taxed on any level, so it's not taxed, but there is income that's generated by locals. So that income trickles down within our community, right? It's spent locally by locals to pay rent and to pay for shoes and tires, etc. It's a business employing people. Do you see the benefit of that?
I do, if that's how it works.
How else can it work? You have to employ people to process material.
Well, I mean, I think there's been a coin, one of my words, a term coined in our community. It's called trimmigrants. So we have transient workers that come through during trimming season and then they leave. So I suspect that because of that, they're not on the tax roll, they're not local, and they're not bringing their dollars and their money to our community. So
is that legal? Commissioner, or I mean, Mr. Connell, is that legal? We're talking about legal businesses. Can licensed farms and processing facilities bring in quote unquote trimmigrants legally?
Sure.
The only requirement for employments is that they're over the age of 21. We don't require residency. We don't require proof of residency. We don't require any of those
Tax.
mechanisms. We don't actually get that far into their business plan. That is their employment mechanism that they would need to employ the available personnel from where they can find them.
Does the OSHA or the state regulate employment?
The only thing that I'm aware of is that you have certain things based on the number of employees you have to have OSHA, general industry OSHA standards to apply, but they don't regulate who you employ, where they come from. The only thing that's required in the cannabis industry is that they're over the age of 21.
So for a licensed regulated business, I would like to make the assumption that they would be following laws and regulations and paying taxes because they're in the program. We don't make regulations for people that skirt the rules. We make regulations for people that follow the rules.
no, and I'm not saying that, and I want you to understand what I'm saying is that your comment was that we're creating jobs by bringing in processing when it seems, and I don't know, but again, the term trimmigrant is a pretty prominent term in the community. And I think we can all see that by the influx of people during the fall and the outflux of people when it's over. Is it, and it's probably much like a lot of farming communities where you have a lot of transient workers that come in and then they leave. So if that is what we're talking about, is creating jobs for people that live in our county, it doesn't really hold water.
So being a parent at Junction City School, I would say 10%, 15% of the parents are part-time trimmers that live here. So these are jobs from local farms, and they're processing the material from local farms. And so we want to really encourage business, right?
Well, we do, absolutely.
Okay.
But you also have the people standing in front of the holiday market asking where they can go get a job trimming. So
I think that's all across America. People standing in front saying, help me, I need a job, I don't need a job. But we're trying to encourage employment.
well, I mean, sorry for that comment, but and I do agree. I can see that striking the 75%, as long as we are requiring a conditional use permit, that seems to cover the issue. So
I can agree with that. Todd or Rory, do you guys have comments on this?
Yes, I have a couple of comments.
Rory, go ahead. Commissioner Barrett.
Thank you, Debbie. I have a couple of comments.
Can you
First
turn
of
the
all,
volume up?
Right, hear you.
You can't hear me?
it's really hard to hear you, Rory.
Okay, are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, maybe if you're on your Bluetooth, please come off your Bluetooth and.
Better?
Go, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the advice, Chair Sharp. A couple of comments. First of all, I find I know you didn't coin the term, but trimmigrant as a derogatory term. These people that come to our community because there is a job also spend their money here supporting local industry with tops and local gas and everything else. So their tax dollars spend just as well as yours or mine do. The other concern I have is the whole CEQA argument about bringing product in and the damaging effect it has. What criteria have we placed on CVS? Like, what have we experienced with them? Because I mean, they're selling medicine, which is what cannabis is. So I think it's unfair to create these further hurdles. I've preached this since I've come on this commission. Is the county does everything in its capacity to make this more difficult than it has to be. I just feel that the smell and the mitigation are we can set mitigation to provide for the smell if that's everyone's concern. And I just see this as another way to hurt this industry when it's legal and the tax dollars are welcome and very, very much needed in our community. As Commissioner McIntosh addressed, the school population is dropping down, our teachers, it's difficult to get housing here. It's just a bad deal all around, and I think we should embrace this industry and help it in any way we can. The 75% rule, I know Ms. Shuden has addressed that multiple times, and we can limit that in documents or work our way around it, but I see this as just another way for the county to abuse an industry that is desperately needed. Thank you.
Commissioner Heaton, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I got it. I agree with what we just have it's a struggling industry. The truth of the matter is the whole county is the whole industry and county for the most part is struggling regardless, unless it's federal or some sort of government thing. But it's like when you get to the private industry, the vast majority of, at least on my end of the county, it's like vast majority of industry just struggles, period. That's all it is. And I kind of see where it's like, I'm agreeing, it was like the 75% threshold. I feel that that's not a necessity thing. And it was like, and I think it should be lowered down. And it was like, just for the simple fact is just like they're saying, it makes it easier on everybody. The not trim immigrants, but the trimming aspect, it was like, you know what? It was like, it's like, I can see all perspectives, all sides of it. And it's like, we're just in a really hard place. We really are. And I'd probably have to say, not saying less regulation, but it is like, but we don't need to overregulate. That's the beauty of our government. Our government overregulates everything to the point that it dies. And I don't want to see that. And I also want to go back to the one other element that I want to say is going back to the distances offset from the 1,000-foot distances and stuff of that nature from the church and all that. And because y'all know that I'm a pastor or whatever. And it was like, John brought up that the state level is 600 feet. Okay, if the state says 600 feet, you know what? I don't have a problem with it being 600 feet. And it was like, the matter is, I have farms that aren't too far. They might be just a little over 1,000 feet from church or whatever. And it was like, you know what? I love those people just the same. It doesn't matter one bit. And it was like, you know what? We have a radio deal on because of COVID. We transmit. I have people who work out there in their gardens and listen to the Sunday morning service. And it was like, and honestly, I have gentlemen in my community. I have a barbecue on the back porch. Maybe I shouldn't say this over Zoom, but every once in a while they'll say, "Todd, we have an offering for you in the barbecue on the back porch of the church where we'll do our barbecue." It's like even the church benefits from the and I know the church down the road at Lamb Creek Christian Center, they benefit from it, and there's growing that's close by there as well. It's like, I don't think that we should lower our standards below the state level, but I don't think that it's like, if the state says this is what it is, I don't think we need to necessarily raise it and make it harder for our communities, because the truth of the matter is, all I see is things are going to be getting harder in the future. And it was like, the more industry we have, probably the better off we are. And it was like, and just as whether my brother, he's in construction or whatever, it's like, the more regulation we put and make things stringent upon people, it's like our government is already doing that to us. Not as at the federal level, they're taxing the heart and soul out of people, and they're making regulation hard. I don't think we need to go down that road and tie extra burdens to the people. And that's kind of where I'm at in the situation. Sorry if I'm long-winded.
No problem at all.
So maybe for that section, I would suggest that we include the minimum distance of 600 feet, but we don't allow variances.
Correct.
But we do require odor mitigation.
I think that's reasonable.
I may be open to that if we strike churches and residential facilities out of that, because
Well,
the state of California does not.
Yeah, they do regulate residential treatment facilities.
So I would
And
say,
churches are youth-oriented facilities.
I would say
Duncan.
that whatever the state allows, we stick to the state. And my understanding is that churches and residential treatment facilities,
Residential treatment facilities are that is a minimum distance required
if
by the
they are,
state.
thank you. If they are regulated by the state, and if they are part of that, then we keep it in. But anything more than what the state demands, I think that needs to be
I
removed.
can tell you, that's definitely in the state code, residential treatment facilities.
Can you verify that? Director Connell?
Director Connell, if I may, through the chair.
Yes.
I have tried to look it up a few times. I cannot pull up the exact language, but I do know that there's a subtle difference where they talk about residential treatment facilities. Those are recovery places. They are almost all at a setback requirement distance, and they are named throughout the document. I can't find the exact section and the exact definition. And they usually clump them together as sensitive site receptors.
Right.
That's what they're listed as, and those are the setback buffers that are required.
And what about churches?
We
I
added
can't pull
churches.
open the definitions at the state level of what a sensitive site receptor is. It's just not coming up on my phone at this point in time.
So the county, when we first developed the ordinance, we added churches. That's not a state requirement.
For the obvious, I mean, most churches have youth programs yearly, summer, Wednesday nights, there's always youth at churches. They're youth-oriented facilities, which is why it's not about religion. It's not about separation. It's about youth and keeping them in a place where they feel safe and not saying that it isn't, but it's not a commercialized area. There's church activity that is youth-oriented. I think it's important to honor that.
Residential treatment facilities, I mean, if you have people that's recovering from some addiction, you don't want to have them having to walk by, something like a processing facility or something to get to the treatment facility.
Right, because that implies that there would be people smoking outside of it. There would be
No.
advertising. There
Anything.
would be, I mean, because when I visualize a processing facility, I visualize a warehouse like Sharp Electric with a fence around it and security and it being discreet. There's no reason for a process facility to be advertising to passerbys. So it's not like a liquor store with bright lights. It's a discreet warehouse that has a security system. So like if there's no smell and there is no advertising, then it being next to a church should have absolutely no impact. Unless just the presence of it has an influence on our children. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what we said when we developed the cultivation ordinance, and that's kind of what's the state has, like Director Connell has indicated, they've identified these sensitive receptors. So they did not include churches. That's something that Trinity County added, but they did include the residential treatment facilities, the youth-oriented facilities, and the other things that we list.
And I also think that that is why other communities and counties have developed actual processing districts in their communities. And most of the time, these districts land, the Humboldt one is completely away from anything. There's not a church, there's nothing that we have on here is within 1,000 feet of that. And that is why they do that. It's to create symbiosis in their communities. It creates a space for people that they don't have to have conflicts with these other areas. I think it's wise. It's good planning.
That facility or that district is state of the art. It's world class. I would agree. But with regards to processing, comparing cultivation to processing, cultivation being grown an agricultural crop where you have a 1/4 acre of flowers that are ripening versus a warehouse of processing material is apples to oranges.
Well, yeah, but in other counties, they obviously seen the need to separate.
Well, it does need to separate. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. But they are different processes that require different mitigations based on the environmental impact, right? Cultivation has fertilizers and pesticides and are plowing the earth, where this is likely on a cement slab in a warehouse that is set back with barbed wire fence or fence like your business. That's very nice. And so it takes a different level of regulations. So comparing cultivation.
Well,
to that
I
is-
don't think we are. I think Well, I mean, I'm not, and I'm just pointing out the sheer fact that in Humboldt,
Mhm.
they felt it necessary to create a district
Mhm.
for processing away from all these places. Not comparing it to cultivation, not comparing it to anything, but they wanted a space that these activities could go on and not impact their communities.
Another aspect that I'd like to just kind of throw out there is with regards to the variances in cultivation. There was, we have 500 farms. There was this wave of licenses that came through. So many of them needed variances. I personally received a variance in my neighborhood and had a beneficial impact. And I mean, I benefited from one once upon a time. But with regards to processing facilities, we're not talking about 400 processing facilities, right? It's like one processing facility per every 50 farms or something like that. So we're not going to be seeing a wave of variances coming through in those. And so since our land is not like Yolo County, since our land is very, very distinct, where you could have 150 acres, but then you have 2 acres that's flat, and that 2 acres might be 500 feet from a neighbor's parcel that is also 2,000 acres, but the property line is right there, but his house is a quarter mile away. So the variance is a mechanism that is an essential component to make sure that business can still conduct in our most rural customized areas. So just eliminating the variance mechanism, while I too am exhausted by the variances, of the cultivation variances, it is an essential component to our process.
So,
Actually, go ahead, Carol.
well, I'm just trying to move this along. So since I kind of made the suggestion, so maybe we can do a straw poll to present to the Board of Supervisors on this issue. So what I would suggest we straw poll on would be cannabis processing facilities shall not be allowed within 600 feet of a youth-oriented facility, school, or residential treatment facility, provided odor mitigation is implemented unless a variance is obtained.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
I think we should do a straw poll. I think Commissioner Barrett would like to speak. So if you have something to say, go ahead.
Oh, well, thank you. Two points. I would agree with Commissioner Fall's just recent suggestion. And then the other one I wanted to point out is about churches and schools. We have liquor stores, gas stations with alcohol all over, and we're already all of a sudden we're concerned about the kids or at churches. You know, alcohol, I would argue successfully, is more of a impact than cannabis ever is, and it doesn't have the guidelines or the treatment that we are giving to cannabis. So to say that we're worried about a recovering addict walking past a cannabis treatment station, where's the argument for them walking past the cooler, an alcoholic walking past a cooler in Holiday Market or at the gas station? The argument that we're worried about recovering addicts, we have to give it the same treatment that we give other industry. But with that being said, I do agree with Commissioner Fall's recent suggestion to adopt with the smell mitigation. Just I wanted to throw that out about churches and recovering addicts.
Thank you, Commissioner Barrett.
Hey, and Rory, to add to that, this is a processing facility. A liquor store that an addict would walk by, they would be able to walk in and obtain alcohol, just like they would a CVS, Tops, any grocery store, any gas station. This is a processing facility. This is not open to the public.
Okay.
Very much agree. Correct.
Let's go ahead and take it to a straw poll, guys, so we can.
Commissioner Fall, could you please read it one more time?
Sure. So my suggestion is cannabis processing facilities shall not be allowed within 600 feet of a youth-oriented facility, school, or residential treatment facility, provided odor mitigation is implemented unless a variance is obtained.
Thank you.
Aye.
Okay. Do you want to run the poll, Deborah, please?
Sure. Commissioner Fall, how do you?
So aye. Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote for this?
Aye.
Commissioner Sharp, how do you vote for this?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrett
Aye.
and Commissioner Heaton?
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0 on your straw poll.
Okay.
So do we want to go back to kind of the language we want to implement on the paragraph B, where cannabis processing facilities shall not be allowed?
I think we need to clarify the WCSD. And I feel, obviously responsible for this. It is my district. I have a hard time believing that folks in my district would want processing if they didn't want cultivation.
But they do want manufacturing.
Well, I don't think it's manufacturing. They voted for, we voted for nurseries and retail.
Manufacturing is allowed in the Weaverville Community Services District outside of the historic district. So that's why there is a permit for a facility in the industrial park for manufacturing.
So what is the difference between and I just guess, clarification, what is the difference between manufacturing and processing? Isn't it the same?
No.
So Chair Sharp, manufacturing is usually where you're using either a solventless or a solvent-based extraction material, rosin presses, with ice water hash, anything where you would look at it as a value-added product line. Processing is literally processing of dried flower. So, some parcels don't have the ability to process their own material. That's where a processor really would step in. They would be able to take that, fresh farm off the farm into a processing facility, grade it down to where it is retail ready is kind of the words that are used, retail ready, packaged, labeled, ready to go out for testing and return before it hits the marketplace. So that's really the separation between manufacturing. You're manufacturing a new product line from the baseline of the flower versus the processing company is processing the grown flower.
Understood. And thanks for that education. So I would agree then that if we do allow manufacturing, then drying is probably within that privy. I do want to go back. Did we, and again, I've been up since 4:30. So did we, on the last piece, did we move to strike variance?
No.
That was not part of the straw poll.
So I would like to do a straw poll on that. Could you run a straw poll on the verbiage, taking out the verbiage variance?
So before we just go back to variance, can we just please have a little bit of
We have discussed it. So I want to take a straw poll at this time. And
so variance
Deborah,
on all variances or just
as it's
this particular,
this.
just in item C, not allowing any variance at
Correct.
all?
C and D.
Okay, C and D.
Correct.
And D would be from bus stops, authorized bus stops. We haven't discussed that. I'm not even sure what an authorized bus stop means. And so I think we need to discuss this before we vote on it.
That's in the current ordinance, the authorized bus stops. And so the school districts authorize bus stops and they do move around depending on where the kids live. But yeah, that is in the current ordinance.
And so once there's a bus stop, I'm sorry, I know this has probably been discussed, but just for clarity, because we're making policy that will affect business here. Once it's authorized, is it only authorized while there's children there? Or once it's authorized, is it set in stone? How does that work?
It's authorized by the school district, so it does move around. And that's why I think a variance is appropriate there because it might move depending on where the kids live.
So let's do a straw poll on both each individual. One for C, one for D. Deborah, could you run that straw poll, please?
Commissioner Fall. And this is to retain the language.
This is to
Okay.
remove, so let me be clear. So we're going to address item C first. And it is to remove the verbiage unless a variance is obtained.
Chair Sharp, do you mind if I step in and read letter C as you're trying to gather that small straw poll, since I did take down the notes from Commissioner Fall? So it would, as we're trying to straw poll this, it would read as cannabis processing facilities shall not be allowed within 600 feet of a youth-oriented facility, a school, or residential treatment facility. We're trying to take a straw poll to remove that last portion where you could apply for a variance to reduce that setback.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll take a straw poll on that one first and then item D second.
Commissioner Fall,
So I want to retain variance, so I guess then I'm a no on removing it.
Commissioner McIntosh,
No.
Commissioner Sharp,
Yes.
Commissioner Heaton,
Yes.
and Commissioner Barrett.
No.
Okay.
I have 3-2 to keep the variance.
Okay, so let's do one on item D. And the same thing.
So item D would now read, cannabis processing facilities shall not be within 500 feet of an authorized school bus stop.
Unless a variance is obtained.
Correct. We're taking that straw poll to
Okay,
remove the
got
variance
it.
language. So
Got
would-
it, got it. Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Deborah?
Commissioner Sharp,
Yes.
Commissioner McIntosh,
No.
Commissioner Fall,
No.
Commissioner Barrett,
No.
Commissioner Heaton.
No.
I have 4-1 to keep
Keep it.
the variance
That is
on
correct.
D.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you for that, you guys. Okay, is there any other language that we need to adjust here?
Well,
Mr. Chair.
so back to B. So I would like to add Rush Creek Estates. We want to define that legally. The Lewiston expansion, same thing, since those have been permanently adopted by the Board of Supervisors. Under F, any opt-out area designated by the Board of Supervisors, I think we need to say with the exception of the Weaverville CSD. And then I would like to strike under paragraph 2, which are in proximity to higher density populations and therefore create a substantial risk of public nuisance. I think that's a little too narrow. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, let's take a straw poll on that. And before we do that, can you repeat what she said?
So we would be adding Lewiston expansion area as a codified defined opt-out area along with Rush Creek. We would be on point F, it would say any opt-out area designated by the Board of Supervisors except the Weaverville CSD. And then we would be removing to read now, point 2 would read outright within the legal boundaries of the following areas which are in.
No, just stop at areas.
We'll just finish it. That's exactly what I was thinking. So we'll say within the legal boundaries of the following, point A, Historic District of Weaverville, B, Coffee Creek Fire Department, C, Trinity Center Community Service District, D, within the following areas of the Lewiston, E, Bucktail Subdivision. I would imagine F will now be Lewiston expansion, G would be Rush Creek, and then H would be any opt-out areas designated by the Board of Supervisors except the Weaverville CSD.
Exactly.
So just for clarity,
Mhm.
so we're going to be, without discussing the land use findings for eliminating processing from 55% of ours.
We have discussed it.
well, I haven't seen any findings because this processing is new coming before us right now. And so we're gonna go ahead and just completely remove processing from all these districts. So this is what's on the table.
Right.
Without, okay.
Same as manufacturing,
Same as
testing,
all
retail,
of it.
non-storefront,
is-
everything else.
Each one is very different and has environmental implications.
We
But
understand
this implies
your point.
we don't want your type here.
We,
So
well, it's not,
let's
that's not at all.
vote
We're
on
just,
discriminative practices.
no, we're actually following what we've already
Let's
put
bring it to a
forward.
vote. I
Okay.
mean,
So Deborah, can you bring us to a straw poll on that, please?
Commissioner Fall,
Aye.
Commissioner Barrett,
No.
Commissioner Heaton, Commissioner Heaton,
I'm torn.
attention of the knife. Come on, man, give it to us.
Todd, do you understand the question?
Oh, I understand the question. And it's like, and I'm really struggling. I'm torn. I'm torn. I see both sides of the situation that is going on here. And it's like, really, it's like,
You have the right to abstain if you don't want to vote on it.
okay, I think I'd prefer to abstain because honestly, at this point, I'm not fully sure if I've made up my mind just yet. And so to lean one way or the other. And
all right, thank you.
I think
Thank you,
I'd
Todd.
rather do that.
Commissioner Fall,
She already voted.
Commissioner McIntosh.
Already voted.
Nope.
No.
No.
And Commissioner Sharp.
Yes.
2-2.
So, maybe we could take that back to the board.
Correct. That's what we're capturing again. Like we did the last time. I'm trying to synthesize everything down, make sure that we have these all marked. I think between myself and Ms. Shuden, we'll be able to get these proper to the board.
We appreciate
Well,
it.
and I think the Board of Supervisors has been pretty supportive of opt-out areas and limiting cannabis type activities. So we'll see what they decide.
Perfect. Is there any other verbiage that we've got here in approved fire plan? So an approved, I think, yeah, item J, page 4. An approved fire plan must be submitted with the use permit application. Do we kind of clarify that we want to add verbiage in there to check with local jurisdictions, fire marshals?
I believe Commissioner Fall is going to help me kind of coordinate the fire chiefs meeting, and then I can bring this forward to them. As I've said, I have not, granted, I am still fairly new here, so a lot of this is me carrying over what's already in place. But I have not had a lot of interaction where or response that the fire chiefs want to impart on these. So I think that if I can work with Commissioner Fall to get in front of the fire chiefs, I can get their buy-in and then make that recommendation as well. But I am hearing that is something that we, at this commission level, that you would like to see go forward.
Perfect.
Yeah, and some clarification of what you anticipate would be in a fire plan. If it is just the personnel safety and fire prevention type clarification, or if it is looking at the building,
Yes, ma'am.
that would be, I think that would resolve that issue.
Yes, ma'am.
And then on type N, Ms. Shuden, you're going to clean that verbiage up a little bit so it's clear on what they're saying.
On what a felony
Yes,
person, what felonies would preclude someone.
and will get clarified. And I did want to ask back on the fire plan, was it your intention that it be renamed a fire safety and prevention plan? Or is that not necessarily needed?
I think that's probably good clarity.
If that's what you're looking for, I think that would help.
I think it's good to be, I'm missing the word I'm looking for, but yeah, clear on what we're asking for. What is an improved fire plan?
Got it.
With regards to B, cannabis processing.
Commissioner Heaton has his hand raised.
Thank you.
Another thought that I was wondering, did we get it clarified on the 75%?
We're striking that.
What was that?
We're going to strike that from it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I had a question. So on the ventilation, are we going to clarify that the ventilation should include odor mitigation in whatever we want to call it, populated areas,
High density.
high density?
I would agree with that.
I would
As
too.
long as high density is part of that.
I'm sorry.
So,
what was
so
that
we would,
last
we
one
would,
again?
we would want odor mitigation for projects which are in proximity to higher density populations and therefore may create a substantial risk of public nuisance.
And we're
something like
talking
that.
about point G in 43I040.
That is correct.
Regulations.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where I just want to make sure I'm capturing this correctly. You want to take the portion where we had struck it earlier as you felt that it wasn't required for the areas of proximity to higher density populations. You want to put that in
Yeah,
G and require the odor mitigations, carbon filtration, correct?
Right. There.
So would it be appropriate to just have odor mitigations? Because there's different technologies that are coming forth, and carbon sequestering or whatever that it's called is the technology at hand presently. So
just odor mitigation.
odor mitigations, appropriate odor mitigations or something just to make sure the odor does not release.
Do we want to call them mechanical odor mitigations, as lavender, rosemary, external plants could be used as the same thing?
I think so.
Yeah, so that's out of my purview of understanding. We just want to make sure not to prohibit future technologies that might work better. I've seen, I believe it's like ozone, different types of just like light bulbs that do things with ions and such.
Febreze.
Works well.
Please. Duncan, you had brought up something.
Yeah, with regards to B, cannabis processing facility shall be located in zones that specifically provide for this use. The facility shall not be on prime agricultural soils as determined by the planning director or his or her designee. I am open to that as long as no other agriculture is allowed to process on prime agricultural soils. So again, for instance, dairy lands in Ferndale, right, where they are milking, or in Scott Valley where they're storing all their hay. Processing and agriculture go hand in hand. And so I just want to make sure that it is the regulations are across the board equitable with other agricultural crops. I know there's hay processing, or there's hay storage in Scott Mearson has it, and down in Peanut they have that as well. And so, yeah, or even grape processing, right? Can you process grapes on agricultural zoning?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Commissioner McIntosh, the items that you're laying out as what you would require to be comfortable with this are not before you this evening. Those would require modifications, I'm imagining, to a number of places within your zoning code. And that's not before you this evening. So I just wanted to make sure that's clear.
Oh, I'm
I
not
think-
asking about, pardon me, sorry.
So I think Duncan is just asking that the staff do a little research. I mean, to look at, where we have prime agricultural soil in the county, and then B, that whatever limitations are applied to cannabis are consistent with other ag processing.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Sharp. I mean, fall.
It's late. I think that's reasonable, that we should see actually where our agricultural land lies.
So maybe what our recommendations from the commission could be that
The board to review it.
that whatever is whatever mitigations or processing is allowed for other agricultural crops be applied the same for cannabis.
I think you can go to the general plan and it's got a map of where we have prime agricultural soil. And yeah. That is a state definition. Yeah.
This is a state guideline, right?
Yeah.
There's
Correct.
a,
Prime soils are designated by the state of California.
That's what I thought. Okay, is there any other verbiage we want to add, commissioners?
Not for me.
None for me?
I'm good.
Commissioner Fall?
That's all I had.
Commissioner McIntosh?
I'm good.
All right. Ms. Shuden, Director, are you guys satisfied? You've grasped what we're after?
I think we would be looking for a formal action from your commission. The recommendation is on page 3 of the staff report. It's a 3-part recommendation. You would be making those 3 actions with the direction you just gave to us falling within action 2.
Okay, so I will move that the planning commission find that adoption of the proposed ordinance falls within the scope of the cannabis program EIR certified by the Board of Supervisors on December 21st, 2020, resolution 2020-10, and that we adopt attachment A, an ordinance of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Trinity amending Title 17 zoning of the county code to adopt Chapter 17.43I cannabis processing with amendments presented from the commission to staff tonight, and that we direct staff to file a CEQA notice of determination NOD within 5 days of adoption by the Board of Supervisors.
Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Deborah, can we have a poll or vote?
Yes. Commissioner McIntosh, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Fall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Heaton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Barrett, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Commissioner Sharp, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you, unanimous.
And I would just like to add, in addition to those, I would request that the staff under general plan consistency, the land use element goals and objectives, the economic goals, that they do add by encouraging tourism, which is language in the general plan for future staff reports.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, planning commissioner reports. Commissioners, do we have anything to report on?
So on Monday, I'm going to participate in a Zoom call with other Planning Commissioner Association representatives and get the fine the details on the event in Pleasanton. And I'll be reaching out to all the different planners from the surrounding counties and inviting them and encouraging their commissioners to participate in this event. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks for that, Commissioner McIntosh. What date is that?
Yeah, it's October 14th and 15th.
So as commissioners, we kind of have a decision to make. there is a training in Humboldt for planning commissioner trainings on that same day. And it is the closest one to us and probably the most relevant one to our county. You know, I'm torn personally. I know the urgent need for us all to be trained and trained soon. But I also commend you, Duncan, for, you know, volunteering to be part of that and getting all this set up. And I think you've done this before this paper came before us tonight. So, I mean, I kind of feel obligated to attend the meeting that you set up instead of the training, but I also know we need to be trained. So I kind of want to get the feel for the rest of you guys, what your thoughts are, because we do.
So,
We could go to the October 21st in Alameda. Or where is that?
It's in San Francisco.
It's in San Francisco.
We'll be really getting to know one another.
Yeah.
2 weekends.
so I'll volunteer to actually go to the one in Arcata, just because with the volunteer fire department, it's hard for me to get away for several days. Right now, I'm the only one driving the ambulance and stuff. So a one-day meeting over in Arcata is a lot easier for me. So I will take good notes.
9 to 4. It's just one day, one
So-
6-hour session.
Would you be open to maybe sitting with us on another day after that and
Yeah.
maybe doing a lunch training or something with the rest of the commissioners on what you learned?
Yeah, if we can get it noticed, so we comply with the Brown Act, I'd be glad to do that.
Would you other commissioners be open to that?
While I'm always open to continued education, and I'd be happy to and sit and learn from fellow commissioner. I think I'll probably participate in the October 21st one if I could get signed up for that. It's one day. It's in San Francisco. I have friends down there.
I think it's valuable because you'll hear a different perspective from Humboldt Lake, Mendocino versus those other counties. That would be good.
I think I'm with Duncan on that too. I feel the need to be trained as well formally, so.
If I may, this flyer, when you go to their website, asks you to sign up and then they will send you information. I think one of the things they are trying to do is to find out how many folks are interested.
Okay, so thanks, Deborah.
To each meeting, it'll pop open and ask you to put your interest in with an email.
So I just ask Rory and Todd, if you're still there.
Yep. Go
Are
ahead.
you guys interested in either one of these trainings or
Absolutely.
attending with Duncan?
Absolutely. I'm interested in all the trainings, and I would probably go with the San Francisco one myself. But I am always keen to learn and try to do the best I can for this community. But San Francisco one is the one I would lean to.
Excellent. So how about you, Commissioner Heaton?
I'm definitely interested in the October 14th and 15th down in Alameda. And
That's the 21st.
That's the 21st. Is that the one that you set up there, Duncan?
Oh, the one that is the Planning Commissioners Association conference that we attended last year will be in Pleasanton this year.
Oh, where is Pleasanton? Is that Bay Area also?
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll be visiting Hetch Hetchy, which is the water source for San Francisco, touring wineries, big gravel and cement plant.
Yep, I'm there.
I'd like that one. And,
Okay, so-
but I have to check my skit. That's like the 14th, 15th, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have to check my schedule. I would like to, but I'm not exactly sure what my church schedule goes on to, but I'm very interested in that. And then the one on the 21st in Alameda, I might be interested in that one too, but I got to check my calendar and I don't have it before me right now.
Thank you for that.
Would
So-
we need to cancel the meeting on the 13th? Because you guys would have to travel on the 13th, correct?
Mhm.
9:30, yes. Mhm. And would the county provide lodging for this training and cover the cost for this?
We would have to submit travel requests
Mhm.
and they would have to be approved.
Okay.
So the sooner we do it, the easier it is.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is, if all of us commissioners could contact Duncan and confirm with him if you'll be attending the association commission meeting the 14th and the 15th. And if we could do that, let's say within a week, so we can get those numbers to staff to get us vouchers, travel vouchers, that would be great. And then, go ahead, Duncan.
Actually, I think that would go through the planning director, right? I touch bases with the planning directors and then they'll line that aspect up, is my understanding.
Well, we're
I'm
gonna,
just
so
a
we're gonna
messenger.
we're gonna tell you how many of us are going. And then you can tell her, since you're running it.
We could do it that way. Sure. You
Just
can-
to kind of,
give me a call.
well, I'm just thinking if you're okay to it, I mean, you don't have to, but if you're okay with it, because it's gonna get a little convoluted. So,
Okay.
and those of us that want, and especially for staff, those of us that want to go to separate trainings, i.e. either in Alameda or Humboldt on the different dates, if you could make sure that you get this paper out. Did you send this to our emails as well?
No, not yet.
So staff will send you the Institute for Local Government Regional Planning Commissioner trainings to all of our emails. For those of you that want to go to these trainings, if you could take it upon yourself to contact, there's contact information on this form, and sign up for those trainings on your own accord, and then let staff know that you did sign up and possibly get us some travel vouchers for those as well. I think that would kind of hopefully clear things up. And if Duncan's open to getting us all to the other one, then we could go that route. Okay, cool.
It's not a Brown Act thing to go through you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I don't think I'm necessary. That would just be one more step. We can just contact the planning department and let them know that we will be attending.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't need to be in that part of it.
So there it is, y'all. If you guys that are online there, so just contact Deborah if you want to.
Yep, I got
The
it.
association commission meeting.
Yep.
And sign up for the trainings.
Yes, sir. Got it clear.
Perfect. Is there any other reports?
The commission, the planning director.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
If there's no other reports from the planning commission, I'd like to open it up to the planning director's report at this time.
Hoorah. Thank you, sir. So I think I said this last time, it was kind of a little bit of a heated back and forth, and everybody's speaking their mind and everybody's talking and communicating. That's exactly what should be happening. If everybody comes up here and everybody just glosses over it and doesn't do anything and doesn't share what's really on their mind, it's a waste of time. So you're each representing your separate districts, and it's very, very important for the constituents to know that you're standing up and saying and reflecting what they're wanting. So I appreciate a good, it's not an argument, it's a discussion, because we're going to get to a resolution at the end of it, and it's going to move something forward. So that's very important. Do have a few things here to kind of brief out. I said last time that I would have a report this time. It's just going to be real quick. So we're actively interviewing for planners now. We just did an interview a couple of days ago with a graduate down in Cal Poly. So it was done via Zoom, very encouraging, a recent college graduate, very interested in coming up here. We have a second interview on Tuesday for our planner. We also have some interviews for cannabis planners. So we could be cross-pollinating, going back and forth, helping each other out. But that's very encouraging for us, because what we've gone from, just from the time that I've been here and Sean has been here, Director Connell, is possibly turning the corner on a lot of this stuff that we've been seeing in the past about maybe some stigma issues, maybe some people saying we don't want anything part We don't want anything to do with them. We want to stay as far away as possible, to filling up the coffers now with people. So the staffing, like when I went into the meeting the other day, instead of it being, okay, I'm walking through, how are you doing at the staff meeting? There was an empty seat at the table, and it was very, very encouraging. And that's what's going to help us get through this Appendix C review so that cannabis can get moving, so we can get some of these other projects moving through the county. Because that's my number one goal, is to get projects pushed through, and we needed staff to really be able to get those projects pushed through. The general plan team, hopefully everybody knows this already. They're going to the website and seeing the general plan team will be at Hayfork, the county fair this year. So that's a very, very positive thing. They want input from anybody and anyone that wants to show up and has something that they want to talk about: land use, they want to talk about cannabis, they want to talk about setbacks, anything they want to talk about as far as going forward with the general plan. That's what they want. They're trying to gather as much background information as they can right now. They're also going to be looking to integrate the community plans, which we do have several already on the books. I think the newest one was like 2006 or something. They're quite old. So they're going to be looking at updating of several, if not most of those, just depending on population centers and stuff. And really that kind of rounded out my report for this time. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, hopefully I'm able to answer them.
Thank you for that report, Director. We really appreciate it. Director Connell?
Director Connell, Cannabis Division. First, there were some questions that were asked of me in the previous planning commission meeting, so I feel like it is my job to respond to those. So for Commissioner McIntosh, the question was how many licenses have been approved, and whether or not there will be a break in the logjam. I'm not sure what you mean by that point, but as far as how many licenses, we have 16 issued active licenses. I have a total of 26 approved licenses as of today. Does require a little bit of staff time on secondary reviews and making sure that everything is consistent with our ordinance in order for those to get recommended for approval. Tomorrow, I'm hoping to get those additional 10 into the paper. I'm not sure what you mean by there will be a break in the logjam. These are environmental documents. They are very site specific. They are highly detailed and require a great deal of review time. They will go as fast as that document comes in with adequate coverage of the site specific conditions on that project. I don't know of a way to expedite that review process because it is crafted by our cultivators and our consultants here. And so once those documents are adequate and they are consistent with our environmental EIR and that they codify what is going to happen on that site, we can move those forward. But as far as expediting the process, I'm not sure of a way to do that at this point in time.
Yeah, I was definitely not looking to encouraging to expedite the process, but there are 400 farms that have been cultivating for the last 5 years legally, and they're in line. And my understanding is the bottleneck or the logjam was the planning department. They're all ready. Many of them have had inspections, and so that is what I have heard through the community is the feedback that there is a logjam, so to speak, that there is a tremendous volume, and maybe there isn't enough staff to process that, and so thus the analogy logjam, because there's so much pressure pushing and only a little bit is able to get through at a time.
Well, I would like to say that the logjam is on the quality of documentation that we receive. It is not the lack of staff. We contract that out to 2 separate consulting groups who are focused, and this is what they do as their primary business. So it's not necessarily a staffing requirement.
Okay.
It's a quality requirement. And so as the quality picks up, you will see more recommendations of approval, but the recommendations of approval are coming in slow because the document quality is not adequate enough, and it does not codify that these projects under CEQA will certify under our EIR. The next alternative would be to elevate them to a review for you at your commission level, or to require a site-specific EIR for each project. The goal of our Appendix C document is to streamline the process. It does require adequate writing skills to be written under CEQA law for those to go through the approval. So as those continue to get better, which is what we're seeing, we're starting to see more approvals come through. As that knowledge base comes up and as things become better, it is my anticipation that we will be getting more recommendations of approval and hopefully far less incomplete letters requesting a myriad of documents and cleanups and consistencies. I mean, things as simple as if you have a 10,000 square foot permit and you're cultivating 9,896 square feet, it should be 9,896 square feet throughout your document. It should not change. It should never change. It should not go from 98360 to 500 feet. It should be very consistent throughout the document. And at this point in time, we just have not been able to see that throughout the myriad of submissions that we've received. So as I've said, as those documents get better, we anticipate that our review times will shorten and that more recommendations of approval will come forward.
Thank you for that thorough explanation. My understanding is that most of these documents are going through consultants.
Correct.
Local consultants. And so are you seeing like patterns where particular or businesses have certain inconsistencies that are a pattern so that could be mitigated? Because I've had different consulting companies communicate that they've been wanting to sit with you, they've been asking to sit with you, and that they have not had an opportunity to sit down and address that. And so is that true?
Correct.
So
As your director, I've had a focus on making sure that I have adequate staff to do my job. And so I'm only one person with only a certain amount of hours to work. My focus is making sure that we have people in the building to do the work. I could sit down with every consultant for multiple hours a day and go over every individual project and how to properly write the CEQA document, but it will not expedite their review time. And it will still leave this county and my division and our entire department at a lag because we won't have adequate staff to address the needs of the community. So my focus was to make sure that we had adequate staff to do the work. Now that we're at, I'd say 75% staffing rate. I've got 2 more coming in next Monday to start and officially be a part of the team here in Trinity County. I literally have people beating down the door to get a job within our department. I think that if you were to talk to us in February, it would have been a vastly different field that we were dealing with. But at this point in time, I actually have to tell people I'm full up. I don't have any more room. So, that was my focus when I got here, was to make sure that we had the people in the place to do the work. Now that that's happening, I think that we're starting to get a much more expedited and a cleaner review time. I can say that my director, Ed, has been dealing with a lot of our internal, our local county consultants, because my job right now requires so much of me to be focused on a lot of things that I don't always have time to meet with the public. And I have been pretty open and honest about that since I onboarded here with the county, that my focus was to make sure that we were able to do the job before I would start to dedicate time to the public, because dedicating time to the public doesn't actually do anything to make this process work faster.
I think when you first introduced yourself, you said that you are open to talking to the public, that you were very open and please come talk to me. I am happy and open to work here and open to working and talking with people. And so I could see the value in not individual farmers per se, but when there's a consulting company that represents, let's say 1/3 of the farms, by having just a basic conversation about patterns and consistency could possibly be efficient for you and help you help them to raise their levels.
I completely agree. And I will say I'm 99% sure that I told everyone to contact me via email, because I didn't have time to sit down with each individual person and spend hours talking to them about how we got here, the things I need to be careful of, and then a few site-specific project questions that at that time, I was still fairly new here. To discuss that would have been spinning in circles. At this point, we're slowly moving to that point, and I will continue to engage the public. We had our first public engagement meeting where we brought this processing ordinance to the community and actually seeked their recommendations before bringing it to you. So we are making that turn as we get staff that's there, because if I'm in a meeting, that means that the work at the counter and at the division stops. Now that we have adequate staff, that motion keeps rolling, whether I'm there or not. And that's the game plan. That's the intended plan, to ensure that whether I'm here or not, that this process is able to continue to move forward in a complete and replicable way, so that we don't have to worry about opening ourselves up for litigation. And so as we continue to bring in people and we get them trained up, it will free up my time so that I'm not standing at the counter answering, where's my permit? My CCL hasn't been updated. Nobody's returned my phone calls. I call you 5 times a day. I show up here every day. I mean, those are hours of my day that are spent at the counter doing that front level work. And now that we have staff, I feel like we're able to really focus in on those higher level issues.
Right on. Thank you for that. So just for clarity, there's been 16 issued, an additional 26 approved,
There's 26 total that have been approved.
26 total that are approved, 10 that are noticed, that will be noticed in the newspaper next week. Or
It
that
is
are
my
no-
hope. I won't know until tomorrow, probably by about noon when I shoot that email out.
Mhm. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. The next questions I have are from Chair Sharp, which were, how are we, the Cannabis Division, handling complaints related to licenses that are and are not in our program? So the easy one is the ones that are in our program. If we receive a complaint, currently have 2 code compliance specialists that within 72 hours will be out on site to verify the complaint. If they're not in my program, that is immediately handed over to our sheriff's department, and code enforcement from there handles it.
Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. And then my last one was from Commissioner Heaton. The first question were, are there any licenses, cultivations in Ruth? I do not have the specifics of that. I don't know enough people and know enough places in the county to memorize where we're issuing them. So I'm going to follow up with him offline and send him the response to that. And the other question he had was, when will the storefront retail ordinance go before the board? We are currently and tentatively have it planned for July 6th. The board does have some scheduling conflicts that they have to work out. So once we have a confirmed date, but the goal is to have it on the very first meeting in July, get the first reading done and complete, bring it back for a second reading and have it implemented within the next 30 days. So I would imagine that we would be live no later than first weeks of September with a full application ready to go, ready to receive people who would like to start retail storefront applications here in the county.
Thank you for that report, Director. Thank you both. It does feel like we are making headway and streamlining the process, and it sounds like there's some continuity going on in your divisions. So we commend you for your work and your time and your thoughtful reports. So appreciate it very much.
I echo Commissioner Sharp's. I have a question for you, sir. The community plans, will those be have outreach within the communities? They'll be.
Just like the community wildfire protection plan that we did with TCRCD,
Mhm.
it's going to be just like that.
Yeah.
We're going to be taking a group to go in, and it's not just going to be one time in it either. It's going to be over a course of the next 2 years or so.
Okay.
And so there will be multiple meetings in the same places around the county.
Right on. And then also with the general plan, will that all be held in Hayfork at the fairgrounds, or will it also be?
Oh, no. That's just one opportunity that they had over the course of the 3 days to anybody that wants to come up and give input. So that was just one opportunity. So there's going to be multiple around the county over the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Because they're looking to wrap it up in 2024, the early 2024.
They mentioned potentially doing the 4th of July parade in
Microphone.
Weaverville next year. Oh, they mentioned doing the 4th of July parade in Weaverville next year because a lot of people don't go to the fair, but the Weaverville 4th of July parade gets a lot of people. So they would have a booth there.
Yep, Loudon Park.
Great idea.
Okay.
Yep, that was one of the things that I brought up to them as well. And so they said they're just going to do Hayfork this year, and next year they'll do 4th.
Okay.
So it's
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. With that, can I have an motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Commissioner Barrett, Commissioner Heaton.
I believe they both left the call.
Oh, we're doing it. Same place, same time.
What do we have at 9?
Oh,
We have at 9.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna
They had a good time, I
What are
think.
you talking about?
Although-
They were with their friends.
Emily did try to ditch her sister.
That's what the consultant.
Wow.
I think you're right, and Greg went,